cover the exact
Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys.
day that everyone could look at in order, because she's now deceased, is called The Deliberate Destruction of America and the World. Who's Doing It and Why? By Dr. Lorraine Day. D-A-Y, like night and day. I would recommend all of you order this and get this on your bookshelf. We're also going to be talking about the massive poisoning.
Good afternoon, friends. Stephen Benoon here with our good friend Deborah Tavares here. Today is January the 25th, 2025, and I hope that's the right date. Deborah, I can't see very well even with glasses on right now.
Hey, Diane. How are you, bye? Good to see you guys.
This week's Oz Lotto jackpot is $70 million. Make sure you've got your Oz Lotto ticket.
Tonight on Kitchen Nightmares.
What happened to my one?
Benoon here with our good friend Deborah Tavares here today.
I've seen her before. She was good on the Agenda 21 stuff.
It is January the 25th, 2025, and hope
Is it
that's
loud
the
enough,
right
guys?
date. Deborah, I can't see very well even with glasses on right now, but today we're going to be talking about the deliberate destruction of America and the world and how they're going to do that there. And that's kind of taken from the book of the late Dr. Lorraine Day. It's a recommendation that Deborah shared with me today. Deborah, we've got a lot of information to cover here. Thank you for coming on again. So many people are happy that you're here. And by the way, when you're hearing the clicking, because I had several people comment, what's the clicking for? I'm actually trying to work my way through the information.
We've seen it before, haven't we, Diane?
That Deborah has sent to me. So I'm back and forth trying to find different things or search for things. So hopefully this time I got most of them already there and won't have so much clicking this time around. So Deborah, thank you for joining with me again tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. We have so much to cover. The exact book of Dr. Lorraine Day that everyone could look at in order, because she's now deceased, is called The Deliberate Destruction of America and the World. Who's Doing It and Why? By Dr. Lorraine Day. D-A-Y, like night and day. I would recommend all of you order this and get this on your bookshelf. We're also going to be talking about the massive poisoning on this prison planet that we all now are finding we're trying to survive on. It's massive poisoning.
I reckon that fog was massive poisoning. I reckon it's going to be a mass outbreak of tumours in the next 12 months. That's what I think.
And I'm going to go over the fires. I know that, Steve, I sent you a number of photographs about the fires.
Yeah, this first time I've seen it for a couple of years too, Di.
To understand that this is massive microwave and laser warfare. We're in a fifth generation warfare where no longer soldiers and guns and tanks need to be used. And this is being demonstrated on what we're seeing with the fires, not only in the Pacific Palisades and in Los Angeles County and the length of time that this was all burned, but this is where other weapons are being used with the...
Diane, I've seen one of her videos where she was whistleblowing and they were saying that they need executions on primetime TV, the global mob. I remember she said something like that.
Extreme cold events that have happened now in Florida. You were telling me, Steve, that there were many inches of snow, and it never snows in Florida.
No, you know, the thing is the snow falling in Florida is such a rare thing, Deborah. It is like once every 20 years or so, even if that often. I remember, of course, growing up in the Panhandle area and also southern Alabama. We never, I think twice in my life I saw snow. Once was 2 inches. second time 3 inches. It's just not very frequent. And yet this snowstorm hit, and it hit starting in Dallas, Texas. Not Dallas, I'm sorry, Houston, Texas. They got 3.4 inches of snow. Then it went across, going through Louisiana, and by the time it hit Louisiana, all the way up to New Orleans, saw, I think, 8 inches of snow. Mississippi, about 8 inches of snow. Then Mobile got hit with 9-something inches of snow. Pensacola was hit with 9 inches of snow. Milton, Florida, where I also have a place there from my dad, was 10 inches of snow. All of these snowfalls were record breaking. They have never seen snowfall like this. It went all the way to Tallahassee before it finally calmed down.
And of course, we know it's all weather weapons. And I was just talking to a good friend who lives in Wales today, reporting on the record-breaking winds of over 100 miles per hour hitting Wales and the north of Ireland in the past few days. And I want to remind everybody that we talked about the patents on creating the wind, and I'm just going to go over that quickly right now to remind everybody that in the event you did not listen to our last interview. But Steve, how would they get to the last interview? I'm going to be leapfrogging through some of that, but not very much. I'm going to get into the international 15-minute cities, the building codes that have been adopted. So how do people get to our last interview?
The last video we did there together, Deborah, it is, you just go to it. The name of that video is Exposing Man-Made Disasters, Unveiling Hidden Agendas. And that was done on January 17th, 2025, 38,000 plus views. And it's on Israeli News Live YouTube. That's where you can find this video at. And definitely, if you watch it, share it as far and wide as you possibly can.
Yes, please do. I want to just reiterate the patents about the microburst that's now creating the wind, that we understand. That literally, we found this patent November 12th of 2012. And we didn't find it then, but we exhumed it, and it was dated back then, the information. So they talk about the microburst winds and how they're electromagnetic radio weapons, and that's what they are. They're tornado-like high winds and gusts and microburst vortex, and they whip all the trees and the houses. The destruction is enormous. They are causing power outages everywhere. People keep saying, well, we're going to have an EMP. That's an electromagnetic pulse. We don't need to have an electromagnetic pulse. They're shutting power down through all of the destruction that they're creating with the weapons that they have at their control now, all the weather weapons. But the winds are artificially spawned, precision-targeted microburst vortex created by scalar electromagnetic weapon systems mounted on cell towers everywhere. And the U.S. patent is number 7629918. And Raytheon, under the operational command of control through Lockheed Martin, is, one of the largest defense contractors. So again, the high winds, which are literally shaking the walls of houses, destroying everything, knocking power lines down, causing trees to fall over. I want to say this about the trees, because I know, Steve, that you're linking into this video a talk that was rediscovered that Rosalind Peterson here in Northern California was a very outspoken woman, and that's literally how...
Diane, I don't know if we got one of them smart meters. I don't know if we got a smart meter or not.
I learned about the controlled weather was from Rosalind Peterson. She ran a couple of websites called Agriculture Defense Coalition and California Skywatch, and I was distributing her flyers and brochures everywhere I went, and found that people would, when I hand them, California Skywatch, they would tell me, well, I don't live in California, I don't need this brochure. Expensive, beautiful brochure that she spent a lot of money on explaining what was happening to our blue skies. They weren't blue anymore. But then as a result of that, I talked to Rosalind about not saying
Okay.
California Skywatch, because people were not wanting to take the information. So she and I agreed, and I came up with the website called toxicsky.org. So I linked into her, and while she was alive, I was promoting toxicsky.org, and but linking to all of her websites. And what I can say about toxicsky.org now is everyone needs to go there. Please watch the movie called Unconventional Grey, Grey, by Michael Murphy, and understand what's happening and has already happened with the weather. Again, I run 3 websites, stopthecrime.net. You will find many of my current radio shows posted under videos when you open up the site. And I also run primarywater.org. The takeaway with that is we're not running out of water. Water is a renewable. It's created by the process of hydrogen and oxygen, and as it turns to vapor, it surfaces to the into cold and hot springs, and that's where geysers spray up out of the ground endlessly. The deception of all that we have been deceived with is all based upon a weaponized environment. And Steve, I know that we had talked about primary water amongst ourselves for a long time. I think it would be really good to do a show and talk more in depth about the water delivery system.
Okay, it's only 19 hours old, guys.
Yes.
Because many of you may know that the current administration just visited Southern California, the Pacific Palisades fires, and has promised endless amounts of water that they'll bring down even from Canada and Northern California. And we need to talk about the reality of that. It's all just a massive deception on how they can move water by getting to primary water and getting wells. There's a couple of wells above Los Angeles, the Gorlock wells. It's where the last fire was burning north of LA,
Yeah.
closing down one of the major freeways.
Diane, that's similar here. They tell you to do your washing in the washing machine after 10 p.m. and that, because there's not such a drain on the electricity. So we've got the same dogma here.
In the Tehachapi's, and Paul Power drilled these 2 wells, Steve. One was
Wow.
only 65 feet deep. The other one was 100. Now, these were private wells, and each well pumped more than 1,000 gallons a minute. And this is all on a geological site of volcanic, and this is where the waters easily seep up. Now, Los Angeles could develop more wells there and deliver more clean, fresh water through a different delivery system than through the aqueduct. But this is another radio show entirely. I guess this might lead into why there wasn't water in the Palisades and in Altadena where the fires were burning. I said this, I believe, on the last show, but it needs repeating. I noticed that here in 2017, Steve, when they were burning us up in Sonoma County, and we lost 5,000 homes on October the 8th and 9th of 2017. And those were electromagnetic fires. We didn't really realize that at the time. We just were hearing the firefighters saying they've never fought fires that moved so fast. Football fields, by the moments, it seemed, is how they were describing them, moved fast and hotter than ever before. They're not equipped to fight microwave fires. And as much as they try and as hard as they work, they cannot. They don't have the equipment. We're sending these hardworking, life-saving firefighters out there to work against something they're not even told what they're fighting against. And I can tell you, the PTSD of not being able to save communities and watching them just burn in full, is really going to cost heavily amongst the firefighting teams worldwide, because they're not given the right tools, because they're not told the truth about how these fires really operate and how they're microwave fires.
Well,
and
Deborah,
lasers.
is that like in the, I've got the photo up right now where it looks like these boxes are on
Yeah.
fire there with the girl in the goggles and the yellow top there where it's on Sky News. Is that one of those type fires is from a microwave fire?
Yes, thank you for showing that. Let me explain that.
Diane, them electric bike batteries, when they blow up really bad, don't they? They can't put them out.
What you're seeing are wooden posts. It's a barrier on the side of a road to keep cars from going off. And there is a cable going through those wooden posts. They're quite large. The posts are quite large. And the cable is going through it. The microwaves heated that cable up to such an extent that it ignited the wooden posts. That's why those posts are burning. We saw
They done it with
here-
microwave. Okay, I thought they were talking about laser. But they done it with microwave. That makes sense. Because I was thinking, how could a laser get deep inside the metal and not affect the wood? But it wasn't that, it was microwave. Okay, interesting.
see it in that picture. But across the road, there was a guardrail, a metal guardrail that was lagged onto wooden posts, and the guardrail was on the ground. We saw that here in the Paradise fires when we went up to do criminal crime scene investigations. We know they're microwaves, and no one can argue against that because we see many blue structures. I sent you a number of pictures, Steve, showing blue and white, and how those are not burned because, yeah, the blue and white reflects the blue lasers, and the white does too. And that's why people are thinking, oh, they've got to paint their roofs blue and their houses blue. Well, you know, we're in a fifth generation warfare now where they're using microwaves, and they're burning us up. This is the plan. They're burning everything up. So just understand that they're changing up the methodologies of the burns, but consider seeing the colors that are surviving the blue lasers at this moment. Doesn't mean that they'll survive the change up in technology going forward. But we're watching. What we're watching is being live streamed like a daily show. Watching the destruction and the heartache and the sorrow of the people that are losing everything. And they're being told it's a lie. I sent you a photograph of a billboard that has now been shown on television in different newsprint here in California.
This is climate change right on the billboard.
Yeah, it's what they're showing is a billboard, and on the billboard it says climate change, and behind it you see the fires raging in the background. And then what you don't see is the wind then is blowing, and the billboard the material of the billboard that says climate change is being blown away. So now they're selling the idea that this is climate change instead of weaponized weather warfare and fifth generation microwaves and lasers being used on us. In fact, I recently talked to somebody and said, it was just a stranger. And I was standing there and I said hello and they said hi. And they said, how are you? And I said, well, I'm in despair about the fires in Southern California because I'm here in Northern California. And this person said to me, well, the good news is at least they caught the arsonist. So I want to say that they're not catching arsonists. They're deflecting the fact that these are microwave weapons, and they're blaming one-off people that are walking through the communities that are mind controlled. And we talked about this in our first show, and the level of mind control that has now taken over these people that can be literally cued, they can be triggered to do what they're told to do. And I talked about that at length, and I will just remind everybody again so that you can go on to stopthecrime.net, type in Aquarius, Aquarius, and just read this. I'm going to read a couple of things in this, Steve, just to bring people back, because I know not everybody listens to everything. I hope that you listen to these things, because on page 1 of the Aquarius Group Operations Briefing, which is discussing the planned chemical sedation of the population. And it talks about electromagnetic radio wave and microwave pulse mind warfare. And it has had great advantages in that the desired subject or populations has no knowledge of the procedures being used on them. So we're all being hit. In fact, initially when you opened up the show, Steve, you said something about your vision, you couldn't see well, or something like that.
Right.
I want everybody to know, because I've had a lot of people contacting me about failing vision and vision loss. And this is due to the blue screens that we're looking on our cell phones. Also, all the frequencies that are being deployed. We're being made to be blind, and our eyes are deteriorating. And I can only say that this is a big win for the ophthalmologists, because they get to perform all kinds of procedures on our eyes. In fact, there's a new ad that runs continuously. It's called GA, and it means geographical atrophy. Geographical atrophy, and they're talking about these shots that you can get in your eyes that will help the inability for eye loss. They say there is no cure, but it will slow it down. Throughout this ad, it says GA, geographical atrophy. The shots will slow it down, but the side effects could be retina detachment, glaucoma, other eye diseases, and even blindness. And so I can tell you that this is microwave. These are your phones, called weapons, that you hold up near your faces. These are the smart meters attached to your homes that not only cause burns when they're going to burn an area, because the smart meters have lithium-ion batteries in them. You've got to get them off your home. In fact, many people during the Palisades fires were talking about explosions that they were hearing. Well, right now in Monterey, in Northern California, in Moss Landing, one of the world's largest lithium-ion battery storage facilities has been on fire for days. The levels of poisons from this fire are unbelievable. Literally, if you are in the vicinity,
yet it's supposed to be climate friendly. Wow.
Before these poisons dissipate, it literally eats your skin off your bodies, causes burning, eats concrete. It's very corrosive. This is what they're selling us as a result of climate change, that we have to start using EV cars. And so the explosions that I think people were hearing, and I don't know for sure, but it makes sense to me, in the Palisades were EV vehicles blowing up. Now, EV vehicles would certainly be
okay, I'll just say it. That's what they get for going woke. Getting EV cars, buying the Kool-Aid. That's the rewards of it. The car burns down.
Component of increasing the fires, because once they blow up, those fires don't burn out, and they're microwave fires, as you know. You can't put those fires out with water, but the water exacerbates the poisons, and that's another problem with EVs. We'll go into more of a discussion on EVs as we move through a few more programs, Steve, because again, we are being absolutely poisoned. We're on a poison prison planet trying to survive. And I will talk about the fog. I know many people worldwide were talking recently about the low-lying fog. This is a methodology that can be used easily.
Hey, Talia, good to see you.
The areas where they're going to target next, because they have to, and they have been basing areas prior to attacks with current poisons and accelerants that also afford high combustibility beyond even the lasers and the microwaves. And I talk about constantly what people need to do. We need to become more cautiously aware of our surroundings, because you can literally become attuned to a weaponized weather attack, whether it's a hurricane. It doesn't matter what it is. If you just start paying attention to the increased electromagnetic frequencies in the atmosphere. Many people can feel it. It causes prickly skin. It causes itching of the eyes. People feel a heaviness. And when we're heavily chemtrailed, absolutely, people are getting depressed, and it's very poisonous and toxic, and then they hit us with some type of an event. So about the fog, I found this out recently, and I'll just tell you what this is now. It's called Seratia, Seratia. It's a bioengineered bacteria, and it literally gets into our bodies and attacks our nervous system. This is what is also part of what's in these overhead aerosolized death dumps that I call them.
Right.
Death dumps. They're adding all kinds of poisons and chemicals. But I want to talk about this very quickly because I'm just looking at it right now. I want to talk about the autoimmune diseases because in the past, there was about 1 in 700 that experienced autoimmune diseases. Now it's 1 in 7. The stats are telling us. And these are bio-weaponized bacteria. And here's the things that it causes. It causes MS, which involves the nerves. It's involved in Parkinson's, which is, again...
we were lucky as kids not to have too many GABs, because look what happens when you do. They all get autistic and things like that. We were lucky to dodge that. The kids of the day have got all these jabs pushed on them, so it's not going to end well.
The Schwann, SCHWAN cells, and which covers the nerves. That's what Parkinson's is looped into. Speaking of looped, it causes lupus, which is skin. Also, rheumatoid arthritis, which are the joints, and Alzheimer's, and the list is on. These are bioweaponized bacteria that is assaulting the human population everywhere. This is what is happening. And so I want to go into some other things because I know you're going to be rolling some photos through, and I'll describe those pictures as you do that, Steve.
All right.
But, yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, so some of the things that we're looking at here, Deborah, you've also got one here called officials say 130 suspected victims of possible energy, and I'm sure that's energy weapons, at least I would think so, on Fox News.
Well, you know,
Diane, if you think about it, nowhere in history did any historic figure have dementia or Parkinson's. I often link them to the GAB because there's nowhere in history people were affected by that. So it's a new event, and I reckon it's caused by the GABs.
I don't know specifically about that. I just sent that over to you. So we could move on. None of the news media outlets that I know is deviating from the illusion of this being climate change, including our current administration. That is horrific because I think some of the most unbelievable circumstances that humanity is facing is the use of weapons, microwaves, and lasers, and more. The saturation of populations for mind control using energy weapons, which I was talking about in the Aquarius operations briefing, which is causing untold, irreversible health effects. But then also, again, all the frequencies and fires and all of the adopted policies that are in play, that our mayors across the United States and other locations have all adopted. And we're literally living in a world that is so poisonous. The air, the water, the food, I know all of you hear that repeatedly, but it's important to understand a few things that I just learned. I got an insert in my trash bill last week, and I thought it was rather horrific statement. And I'll read it to you, and then I'll tell you what I learned about this. They talked about recycling charges for food waste and organics. The cost is going to go up because it's no longer, those costs are no longer being subsidized by the taxpayers. And they say that they are going to start charging us, and that they have to recover edible food from the waste stream to help support organizations that serve the food to insecure populations.
Oh,
And I
man.
thought, what? They're going to dig through the trash cans and serve the spoiled, rotting food to populations? So I called. I said, what do you mean by this? And then I got the explanation. Here's the explanation. They said that they will collect the food waste. They will sort it if people throw plastic bottles, or they named palm fronds. I don't know why they said palm fronds, but they said that will be taken out. And they will clean the waste, and they will then compost it and send it to farmers. Now, I want all of you to think about food waste. There's toxic chemicals in it. There's aspartame. There's canola oil. There's artificial flavorings. There's poisonous sugars, the preservatives, and every other thing you can think of in food waste. And now they're sending it to the farmers as fertilizer. This is the same thing they've done with poisoning the world's food production area, not just the heartland of California with all these fires and the dioxin and all of the other weapons resulting from the fires through the smoke, etc. But see, PFAS, that's PF.
Talia, is that the guy from the dark web? I don't know why he got a pardon if that's who you're talking about. Pretty sure that's who you're talking about, though.
AF. And that is unbelievable. Here's what's happening with PFAS. They're using sludge from the wastewater treatment plants all over the world and sending it out to the farmers to fertilize their fields. They are poisoning the entire food supply entirely. I mean, that's when they're not allowing raw sewage waste to just go down into the streams. Now, I want to add this because I was thinking about it because, again, I grew up in Santa Monica and in Malibu, and so these fires have really triggered the evacuation that I went through when I was only 11 years old. So I'm watching my town being burned up. In fact, I sent you, Steve, a photograph of the base of Big Rock, and that's the mountain I lived on when I was evacuated in 1961. And across from that current photograph on the Pacific Coast Highway, all the homes, those gorgeous homes along the beach between the highway and the ocean are gone. They're gone. And my husband just happened to see the road sign, Big Rock Drive, and I gasped because much of what I had around me, albeit certainly things have increased building-wise since I was there, but it's horrifying to me. It's re-triggered, re-traumatized the evacuation for me, as many people are going to suffer that kind of loss.
And we're looking at that right now. We're looking at that very picture there as the before and after that you sent.
Apparently, he is creator of the dark web, and the dark web has all the wicked things on it you can imagine. My brother used to send me things from the dark web, but he'd send me porn too, and I'd have to tell him, mate, I don't want to see the porn. It was extreme porn, because my brother hasn't got a very clean mind. But yeah, so it's pretty hectic, the dark web. They even unalive people on it.
Beautiful homes. And you know, this is when you know, Deborah, something's up, because it's right there on the edge of the water. No reason for a fire to really get to these houses. You got a road that can easily block, it's like a fire lane, so to speak, but they burn down anyway.
Well, they do, and I want to add, I sent you the picture of the fire retardant being sprayed on neighborhoods.
Yes, I have.
Poisoning. This is a toxin. This is a neurotoxin.
Hey, Phil, good to see you, bro.
Cancer. And they're using more fire retardant now than they are water. And it's poisoning the firefighters. In fact, I knew of a number of people here in the fires that we investigated where it killed their farm animals. And of course, I took pictures of the earlier fire in Malibu, where I could literally see the trails of previously dumped retardant running down the hills. They're poisoning, they're hitting us and poisoning us and sending in looters. That is the plan. That is what they do. That's what has always been the methodology around a planned attack, and not having water, because none of the areas have had water either. So I want to talk about the intentionality, the long-term repercussions of the poisonous air, because many people are going to die from the toxins in the air alone. You don't survive dioxin, you don't survive asbestos, you don't survive all the metals. To even consider.
Okay, reading that one, that doesn't look like he was peddling sex stuff, bad sex stuff. So that takes a bit of heat off him, I think.
Rebuilding, and the current administration was telling people yesterday as they visited the Palisades, they want them to be able to get up there themselves and start clearing their own lots immediately. This is a super fund toxic site that really, honestly, for decades should not be rebuilt on, because it is all poisonous. But if you want to depopulate, you allow rebuilds. It's poisonous. It's toxic. All the death dumps of the retardants, all of the chemicals from the lithium-ion batteries, these chemicals stay in the area and in the ground, and they waste in the air. We're going to see many, many people die in the years ahead as a result of the poisonous smoke, because they're panicked, they're heartbroken, they're really in a daze, and they're wandering around in this toxic air, unaware that this is the second disaster that has been created for them that they face. So I can only say we really have. I also talked in the last video too about disaster bonds and how they're now financing the enormity of disasters that are created. There's trillions of dollars hunting for a place to make money, and they're making money on disasters. You can go to stopthecrime.net and you can watch the video. Billions are made on disasters. Just watch that video. And I'm looking at an insert I just received. These are all things now cropping up because of disasters that are being created. I'm looking at an advertisement that I received, and it says they specialize in storm cleanup. Well, the storms are caused. It's created. It's created. Another thing, another throwaway I got from our local water company here in Northern California. It says it's talking about retrofitting. Now, I've talked about the requirements to retrofit your homes for years. That's why you're seeing money being spent on retrofitting public buildings and stadiums, et cetera, et cetera. What do I mean by retrofitting? I am talking about replacement. Now, this is not a bad idea, but people are being priced out of their homes as it is, with increased insurance costs, increased costs for utilities, both electricity and water, and in instances gas. I heard, gosh, Steve, I heard from
That's her contact, isn't it, Diane?
a friend. I may have said this on the last show, but over a week or so ago, I heard from a friend in the UK, because Britain is still very reliant on gas for fuel heating. They haven't made the full transition off of gas. And they only, with the storms coming in and the severity of the cold weather that they're experiencing there, it was said they only had a week's supply of gas for people to heat their homes. So this is the importance of having backup capabilities of heating. While much of what we face we can't overcome, but we can do things to harden up, to be a little bit more capable of surviving in the short term of all of this. But retrofitting, so those are mandates coming in on all properties, and here's what that is requiring. Again, I don't say that this isn't good. It is good if you have the money, but the homes are not built to withstand the weather weapons called climate change. They're just not built. Plus, I'm going to say this, Steve, this is going to sound horrific, and it is. But with the use of microwaves and the fact that it can heat all of the straps in housing, the rebar, the nails, everything metal or steel that's used in building of homes, our homes are being taken apart because of the microwaves. They're literally being taken apart. And so getting back to retrofitting, some of the things that will be required are dual pane windows, also extra insulation. Again, not all, these things are good if you can afford it. Changing out any gas appliances or gas water heaters to become all electric. There's many other items too, but that's just a few. And it's going to be mandated by your cities. They're going to come through with code enforcement, and they're going to identify homes that are not compliant under the reduce your carbon footprint or reduce CO2, which is insane in and of itself, because we need CO2. The plants take in CO2, and that's our oxygen. The fact that people are going along with this and fundamentally and foundationally not realizing that we're being built on weapon systems. That is what we're being built on. And our children are being taught in school all these lies. But sadly, I think that the weapons have increased to such an extent. I don't know how long our kids have.
Deborah, one thing I'll mention too real quick. I pulled up, as you said these things, I pulled up articles on it. And when I pulled up the one on retrofitting the homes, an advertisement of the EMP shield popped up on the right corner. Well, oddly enough, after our interview, I interviewed Roddy Meyer. He has a private group, where he helps people to become energy independent, self-sufficient, not relying on government, anything, no electricity, etc. Anyway, we were talking about your interview, and he said, I talked to him about the smart meters and how they use those to even start fires.
Yes.
He said, I will tell you one thing, and he said, you might share this with Deborah. He said the EMP shield, when installed on a home, will prevent a smart meter from being able to start a fire in the house. He said they can't use it against you. He said because it's got like a kill switch on that thing that's faster than the smart meter.
Well, I would have to research that. I have looked at a lot of the preventative ways in which people are being told they can shield their smart meters. Honestly, I haven't found that to be the case. I know that people have used a lot of the paint on the inside of their homes to help reduce the frequencies, but we have scalar waves. We have so many different kinds of ways in which they're targeting us. And
if they can't get you one way, they're going to get you the other way.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
No, I agree with that. 100%.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the use of very low frequencies because in the NASA document that I would like to talk about more in detail on a follow-up show, it's about the effects of the extremely low frequencies and how it's just dismantling our DNA. It's damaging our DNA and increasing reproduction, of course. It's increasing the free radicals within the cells, which can lead to DNA strand breakage. We know all of that. I've had these different symptom lists up on stopthecrime.net for years, telling people what this wireless is doing, and then the pulsed aspect of all of the wireless. And now the Wi-Fi and all the cell towers, and the fact that we know the cell towers are exacerbating wind conditions because of that that patent that I talked about.
Right.
And I wanted to talk about some other aspects of what we're into. And
Talia, I'm just guessing you can't go back once you take the smart meter, because to go back would just have to set up a analog board, and they just got rid of all the analog boards, so I don't think that'd be feasible.
I'm just going to hit upon this now. I'll go into more detail. But many of you that have been following the fires in the Palisades and in Altadena in Southern California, you're hearing about the admitted plans by the governor to
Oh, you can have it shut off.
rebuild
There you go.
a
I never knew that.
15-minute city. And that's becoming now just talked about in the open. So, and people are saying, oh, that's what they had planned on doing, and that's why they burned it up. Well, yes, that's part of all of it. But you need to understand, we were land developers in our business, our working lifetime. And I know that these cities have been long planned because we knew from the Wildlands Project map that we talked about last time, Steve,
Right?
where 50% of the United States alone was going to be off limits for human access, and that there would be human settlement zones. And those human settlement zones are pinpointed around the country. And it's where people will be imprisoned and incarcerated within kill cities of high frequencies and complete and utter surveillance of your thoughts, your actions, seeing what you do every time you do anything. That's what's now on the forefront and rolling in on top of all of us. So I knew that there needed to be some international templates that were already in place for all of these build-outs of cities. And I'll tell you what I discovered. They're telling us the larger cities because right now there are many cities that are designated in the U.S. and overseas as well as 15-minute cities, and they're telling us that Portland and Seattle and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Cleveland, Ohio, and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Chattanooga, Tennessee, they're all smart cities. They're all designated for high-density building. Now, I'm going to tell you what they say in these international templates. Now, what they do is they create these templates. All of the mayors and all of the controllers get together and have meetings at Davos and the World Economic Forum, and all the mayors locally. They're all spurring all of these build-outs, and you have no control over this. Many of you are seeing 3- and 5-story apartments for rent being built everywhere. I'm seeing them by the thousands in my area, and yet we're still told on the news continuously that we have a housing shortage, and there's no mention of all the build-outs for rent because we won't own anything, as we've been told. We'll only be renting. We'll be renting our insurance. Our possessions like our furniture, etc. We'll even be renting our clothes. But that's for another conversation. But that's all happening. And my husband and I went and toured a number of these high-rises that are too expensive for the average people in our area to rent. A very small 1-bedroom, 2-bath apartment that is fully wireless in every way is $2,500 a month, and that does not include paying for your individual use of electricity and water or an additional parking spot, because parking is very limited. They don't want you in cars, as you know.
Right.
They want you in lethal electric vehicles that will explode and burn you up and burn the cities up. This is the plan. These are all weapons. But as I look at this international template that's already in place, and we're already seeing these zoning laws changing, and you're seeing massive high-density construction everywhere, they talk about the 4 pillars of why the 15-minute cities and what they will achieve, what they will promote. They say that it will promote proximity, diversity, density, and ubiquity. Now, ubiquity means this: omnipresence. It means existence everywhere, in all places, at the same time. So what I'm looking at when I look at these international templates worldwide that are coming to your town is we're looking at satellite build-outs. Just like in the United States, we have three main electric grids. We have the East Coast, the West Coast, and then Texas, and those are the electric grids.
Okay.
But they're doing microgrids with all of the with much of the electricity now. They're doing microgrids in these smart construction areas, and they're building these out in every city, because that way people will be moved slowly after disasters, after elimination of dams that supply the water in the cities. There's no alternative to delivering water as they start to take out dams through the weapons systems, or just the fact that they're saying the dams are old, they're not seismically retrofitted, they have to be, they're dangerous, they're going to collapse and flood out the entire city. We've got to take it out, and you're going to have to truck in your water for a while into holding tanks. That's what they're doing right now to be able to rebuild in Paradise that they burned out in 2018, because the infrastructure for the reservoir was burned up, and it would have at the time cost well over $50 million to reestablish the watering system there. And in order to issue building permits, they allowed people to rebuild if they had a sizable topside water tank filled. They have to truck in the water. Now, you know the water is toxic and poisonous.
And tell you what's even sadder, most of the world's not aware of this. We Christians are aware of all this, but I don't think any other people would be as aware as we are.
You don't know who is behind earning the money, trucking in all this poisonous, toxic water that people are drinking, bathing, washing, everything with. But let's go on into these cities, because it's being sold to us they talk about the environmental benefits. Everything about the environment is a lie in the context of climate change. And they're selling these cities to us to end poverty, to end hunger, gender inequity, while protecting the planet and its resources. That's all a lie. They're incarcerating us into kill zones, into areas where we will be contained. They're geofencing us now with these sun surveillance systems that they're deploying throughout the United States. And I asked my friend in Wales today to find out what kind of system they're deploying in Europe, because it might not be the company called Sun Surveillance, but they're deploying these systems everywhere. In fact, Steve, I had intended to send you a picture of me standing by one of these Sun Surveillance systems when one of the representatives for that system was telling me they were connecting it, they were making it go live. But they talk about these international cities and the result of more sustainability, equitable, and healthier world, and international.
Yeah, but Paul Begley charges $49 for his info.
Healthier world. They talk about, and of course we know that these are World Economic Forum ghettos of death. These are prison camps.
Yeah, that's the problem with conspiracy theories, Diane. They usually come true. You're correct.
They're not about climate change at all. And people that have been psyopsed and taught in school and are horrified about climate change, like the Extinction Rebellion that's happening in Europe, and the misguiding of all the lies and the continued mind control that has beset our younger people, because parents use schools that teach disinformation for babysitters. So again, they talk about how they have instructions on how to build out and build back better, and the housing solutions. And these are being brought through and into our cities. One example is called the Housing Solutions Lab at New York University. So there's many universities that are giving information out so that people can create these kinds of prisons in all the cities. They talk about racial equity, increase in access to opportunities, and improve long-term health and well-being for all residents. This is an international plan that you just have been hearing about on the news about the Palisades, Santa Monica, and the county of Los Angeles during these fires. But this is international. Now, here's an example. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, for example, we looked up the International Building Codes and what it says about Chattanooga. And this is going to be everywhere. This is going everywhere now. It's in process now because there are these smart cities all over the world at this point. But they talk about transportation projects will allow the city to monitor over 100 smart city intersections. So in the entire downtown areas of Chattanooga, as an example, installation of 86 smart city intersections and will lead to the largest urban internet deployment of its kind in the United States per the University of Chattanooga. These are coming out through universities and other places. But it talks about, in that instance, 4,500,000 is being funded by our federal government under the Highway Administration. So you need to look under Highway Administration for a lot of these plots that are being rolled out over us. They're not just through federal governments, they're through different agencies of the federal government that are set up to destroy the United States and the rest of the world. So they go on to tell us that you can live, play, and work, and bike and walk. This is how these cities of containment and
Diane, think about it. Trump wants to get AI working perfectly, and they want to set up their own system, but you have to go to Taiwan to get computer chips. So that's a big fail there.
internment camps are being sold to us. Many people believe in that, but they say that Chattanooga has become a living laboratory, providing researchers unparalleled tracking and mapping capabilities and next generation of transportation, including automated vehicles. And that it's the only city in Tennessee participating in the global G20 Global Smart City Alliance over major hubs. Other major hubs are coming into agreement. And these are through the mayors. Your mayors are converging in meetings and in uniformity with globalist plans. It's coming in through the mayors, but other agencies as well. We know that all the agencies in the United States are all supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. Those are DEF goals. I'll go over them again briefly. It's very important to understand that you have to look up your Sustainable Development Goals, because when people say, where can I go to be safe? If you can find a place on this prison planet, this poisonous prison planet, that has not adopted the climate action plans, or AK Sustainable Development Goals, then go there. There's no place. There's no place. They've all adopted these plans. So let me go over some of the agencies. I can't do this enough because people really do need to understand the U.S. federal agencies. They're involved in much of the takeover. And all these agencies promote sustainable development goals. In fact, next time when we do our show,
I was going to ask you, Deborah, real quick, is there something on your website that I can show as you're talking about that there?
You know, I hate to say this, but I'm going to. I have been so clobbered and so hit with inability to use my phones, to use my computer. The pulse frequencies take me offline all the time. I can't even. This is going to.
It's like the crap I've been through this month with my Wi-Fi going down, everything, the storm making blackouts. It's been a bad year so far.
Sound insane, but it all is insane.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble even accessing my website, Steve.
Yep, me too.
Deborah, I'm not surprised. I'm really not. I have another guy I know that we try to communicate back and forth. And we've set, the only way we've been able to talk so far is by Skype. We have literally right there in front of each other on Skype, try to call the other on the phone. Or neither phone will ring, yet we can call anybody else we want. We've tried to text. Our text will not go through either way, regardless. So it doesn't surprise me. And
Well, another thing, yeah, beyond the fact that that there have been energy weapons used, I'm now finding that the U.S. Postal Service is involved in stocking and mismanaging mail. And what do I mean by that? I've had a number of people contact me that send you bills. We all get bills in the mail, and some bills are regular bills, utilities, what have you. And when you haven't moved, that address where they mail your bills stays the same. Well, I'm getting people contacting me and saying it was returned for being unable to be delivered, and yet it was the correct address. This is happening now more and more. So I'm just saying for all of you.
wow, that's amazing, because we have actually have wondered. We've noticed the same situation here, Deborah. Whereas, we used to get so much mail a week on an average, on a regular basis, and now it's practically nothing. And I've wondered. I even said it to Yana. I said I have a feeling that somebody's intercepting, or they're
Phil, I believe the Stargates, like they show in the series, I think they actually exist. I think they've got that technology already.
sending this mail back. It's just too strange.
Well, it is, and a situation that occurred recently is getting a phone call from the insurance carrier saying that the payment is due like today. Where is it? And the bill was never received.
Right, exactly.
So if you go in breach of your insurance, which is another real big problem, where they're using weather weapons, and weapons are insurance as well, because insurance is a weapon being controlled by those that control everything. If you don't have insurance, of course, all of you know that if you have a mortgage, you have to have insurance, or the lender will foreclose upon you. They will foreclose on your property if you don't have insurance. Now, in many instances, people can go to, they call it here in California, the California Fair Plan. You can pay 4 times the amount of what you've paid in the past to have less coverage. But many people are forced into the Fair Plan. And I can only tell you this is massive moving us out of our homes and into these cities. That is what this is. We're not going to be able to afford to keep our housing. But I wanted to go over a list of some of the agencies involved very quickly.
Okay.
There's more agencies than just this, but we have to understand the agencies that have all signed on to climate action plans. In other words, all agreeing that we're using too much stuff and we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, which is not true, to reduce our oxygen. So here are some of the agencies, just a few in the United States. The Department of Defense, all executive department cabinet members and departments. Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, Department of Homeland Security, Department of U.S. federal agencies, environmental protection agencies, cabinets and non-departments with under that environmental, the EPA, and National Aeronautics and Space Administration and all cabinets, the Tennessee Valley Authority, the U.S. federal entity under the department, etc., the U.S. Geological Survey. They go on to tell us that the Bureau of Reclamation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, in fact, they're grabbing a lot of land right now, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Water, Power Technologies, which is the Department of Energy, the Office of Water, the EPA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the U.S. Federal Emergency Management Association, and Maritime Administration or the Department of Transportation. These are just a list of some of the agencies
Hey, Shiny,
that
good
are
to see you.
literally worldwide that are taking down the world, destroying this planet, bringing in the illusion, building a reality from more weapons. We're built upon weapons. That's what's
Yes.
happened. We're built on weapons. So what do I mean by that specifically, Steve? Is the illusion that we're running out of water. So what did they do? They built in a delivery system of water that never needed to be built that way. They could have built it the way that Muammar Gaddafi built it in Libya, which he utilized the oil profits for his people, and he built the Great Man-Made River Project. We'll go into more detail about water on another show, but I've got to get that out there.
Yeah, well, you also showed that picture of the 117 million gallon reservoir that was not even used during the fires whatsoever.
Yeah, let me explain that. This is
I love when Trump had that press conference with California's mayor, and she brought up all the ways of combating fires, and Trump said, "We think water's the best to combat fires here. That's what we think. Use water." And it was so dry, but it was so funny because she didn't know what to say.
very interesting. Quite interesting, actually, because I have a friend that worked for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and was actually involved in putting in a pump system when that reservoir was built. I think that was back in the 80s. That reservoir was built for additional water supply to the Pacific Palisades and areas as they were building more homes there. They needed to have that additional water system, that reservoir, Santa Ynez Reservoir. And presumably that had been drained because there was a cover, a cover over the water of the reservoir to prevent bird droppings as birds flew over that would cause poisoning of the water. And because that cover had a tear in it, in order to repair it, they claimed that they had to empty the reservoir. No, this is how they stage an attack. Now, are there other forms of water that can be used or could be used during that fire? Yes. They just didn't have enough pressure. The system and the water was never designed to fight that many fires. Maybe they could have fought, 6 homes with
Deborah,
enough pressure.
you know what this reminds me of? Just like with when Hamas attacked Israel, and yet they don't tell you that they took out all the armories only 1 week before the attack with all these little communities there. They removed all their weapons so they couldn't.
And Phil, not only that, he laid the blame squarely on the government of California. I really like how he done that.
Defend themselves. It's the same thing here. And tell me that, okay, the bird droppings, they're worried about the bird droppings. Well, what about then up in the lakes and stuff that they use for water reservoirs to do like Atlanta, etc. They got fish droppings, bird droppings, alligator droppings, and everything else in their water, and they're still using the water.
Well, they are. And that's a discussion we're going to have because the delivery system of the water throughout the world is set up on a weaponized platform of delivery. And when we compare what Muammar Gaddafi did in delivering primary water to well over 1 million people in Libya, free of charge, and it was clean, pure, unadulterated water. The water that we're all using is atmospheric water. As opposed to water that comes up from down below. We're the water planet. And the atmospheric water, we've all been taught that our water comes from rain and snowmelt. No, that's the evaporation of the water that comes up and evaporates from down below. And I need to really spend some time on this because Paul Power was a very good friend of ours. He was involved in drilling for primary wells. In fact, he drilled the 2 wells in the Tehachapi's that I mentioned earlier in the show for private use. and he could have developed more water for Los Angeles. But if people watch the movie Chinatown, you're going to see how they use the illusion of water to literally destroy farms and ranches and in Southern California. They took over the water supply. And that's why when the book came out in the early 60s to talk about primary water, it was called New Water for a Thirsty World. All of you need to try and get that book. I know I have it on my website. The New Water for a Thirsty World, written by Michael Salazar. And when that book was released, the water barons in Southern California rounded up as many books as they could find, Steve, and they burned them. They did not want people to know the truth about water. And we have to minimally, as we're still here on this planet, I believe we're obligated to get to the truth and tell people what the truth was. Whether or not we can ever do anything with the truth other than to know it and teach our children is another circumstance that we all face. But I can just say that we must prepare ourselves as best we can to be harder to kill.
Diane, didn't you post something from the 80s where someone who wrote out the plan ahead said that America will get Greenland? They were going for Greenland since the mid-80s. I think it was you who posted that link.
No, for a little while, because that's what we face. That is truly what we face. And again, they taught us repeatedly that we have to think global, but go local. And that's what I want all of you to take away with when I talk about these international building codes. People are stumbling onto them in their cities. In fact, in Marin, California, just right north of the Golden Gate Bridge, they've been discussing on the radio here how ignitable that city is. It's a county, Marin County, and there's lots of cities within the county. And they're talking about how it's ripe for fires. They're talking about how the roads are very narrow and the ability to escape would be very complicated, and it's very dry, and they have not had a fire through there in over 50 years.
Wow.
And then I go and I search Marin County and I find out that they're creating the same cities that you heard about being created in the Palisades. And what I also find out is that
so expect them neighborhoods to burn down next.
this is CAL FIRE, and they have these throughout the United States. This one, our agency is called CAL FIRE. And they're also supportive of the climate action plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and acknowledge climate change. They are involved in deciding, I'm sure that they're one of the many agencies involved in deciding what areas are most prone to burning. And then it so happens that it burns. So we're looking at a number of other areas in California that look like they're being staged for burns, if not this period of time, but soon. We're looking at Marin because they're telling us that. We're looking at Morgan Hill, and we're looking at areas right near Silicon Valley as well. So I can only say that the level of attack is on. The byproducts of the attacks are unbelievably unsurvivable in the long haul. And I think that people just need to understand what we're in, that it's a weapons system, and we're being certainly lied to continuously by the controllers. I want to go over one last thing. I think I may have gone over this a bit on our last show, but this is the importance of going onto the website, typing in the name of your county or city where you live, type in on your search bar the name of your city, followed by climate action plans or sustainable development plans adopted. And you're going to find these kill plans already in place. So here's what they're telling us.
That's a good point, Talia.
The climate changes are going to cause, and this is what they are causing. with what they're doing with these weapons. They talk about the climate change effects, and then in the other column, examples of human health risks due to those specific climate change effects. So here's a climate change effect. Increase in extreme heat events. And they say heat-related illnesses, death, worsening of chronic health conditions. So I can tell you that last year, they were using microwave weapons in the afternoons here in Northern California. People were having trouble surviving, and there were a number of deaths attributed to heat events. This is going to become more common, more frequent, and it's also going to kill the trees. Many fruit trees are, because of the climate change, they're having mildews and funguses on the trees. The trees don't appear in some of the fires that they have not been burned, but all the foliage, all the trees are succumbing to the increased years and years of accelerants dumped on them called the persistent jet contrails or chemtrails, however you'd like to call it. Rosalind Peterson liked to call it persistent jet contrails. She didn't want people to call them chemtrails. And in that video that you posted there, Steve, Rosalind talks about her discovery and how she found out about this tremendous and horrific circumstance. And then it also shows her speaking at the United Nations, talking to them about the concern of climate change. You've got to hear her talk about this. Again, she was a very dear
she's
friend.
rumbled, yeah.
And I'll include that link in the description for those that want to listen to it. I've already been listening to that video put out by Off Grid and Doug and Stacy there. And yes, I got it right here where she was speaking there at the United Nations. And oddly enough, I did exactly what you said, Deborah. I put that climate, what you said, I put in Tennessee, my county, climate action plan. And it says here, does not have a climate action plan.
Okay, so then you type in sustainable development plans.
Okay.
Or type in a town, a large town, like maybe Knoxville or something like that. Because they all are moving forward with the idea that we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. You could type in a large name of a county and type in plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They're maybe not making it so easy. Searches have changed so much since we've been talking about ways in which people can discover things. So
yeah, they do have, the state of Tennessee does have the Office of Sustainable Practices. And they have 3 primary service areas: business, community, and state government, according to what this says right here. So it is under the sustainability is what they have it under.
Yeah, find out the definition of what they consider to be sustainable. We'll go over that more in another show, because we really do need to go over this so that people realize these are international requirements. And I want to say this. Just because we're being told that the United States is pulling out of the International Peace Accords doesn't mean that that's going to change anything. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah, Trump's not a savior. That's what you're saying. Let's tell it like it is.
Well, I could say that, yes. But I will say that pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords will do nothing, because we are being destroyed by weapons within our country.
Yes.
They're using fire, tornadoes, wind, every type of weather weapon imaginable. They're increasing the cost of everything, insurance, etc. And they're forcing people out of housing. We've got so many homeless everywhere. And then we've got the electric vehicles and all the lithium-ion batteries that are used as weapons too. We have a delivery system of water that's highly poisonous. We don't need to grapple with Klaus Schwab, really, and the Paris Climate Accords, because we're already being destroyed from within, and that is what has already happened. So if we look at this climate change and the health effects, they talk about increased air pollution. Well, I've been talking about the air pollution from all the fires. Look at all the aerosolized overhead death dumps. Look at all the fog. We talked about that. But the increased air pollution, they're saying this is what will happen. Increased respiratory illnesses and seasonal allergies. Seasonal allergies are created. That's why they call them seasonal allergies. That's all created from pollution. Then they talk about climate change effects of floods and droughts and wildfires and storms and changes in weather patterns. And they talk about how that will absolutely cause injury and death, respiratory illnesses, waterborne illnesses, foodborne illnesses, displacement, massive displacement. Look at the stress-related disorders that are now being caused. They're talking about setting up mental health agencies in the Los Angeles County area to help people deal mentally with the effects of what they've just been put through. So they talk about increased shift in infectious diseases as a cover. Of course, that's a cover for all the bioweaponization of all of the other forms of targeting they're doing. They talk about another effect of climate change are higher food prices and food scarcity. And they talk about how that will increase hunger and decrease nutrition, of course, and sea level rise, injury and death. So we know that they're using weapons along the coastlines. I've talked about that for years. I have a video up that I did a long time ago called Coastlines Under Attack. They are using weapons along the coastlines. And I wanted to say this too. We watched during the Southern California Pacific Palisades and Altadena firefighting crews, not only with the fire retardant that is a forever death cancer chemical that they were dumping on the houses and everywhere, but then they were also doing some ocean drops, getting some of the ocean water, which would otherwise be fine if the Santa Monica Bay didn't have thousands of drums, metal drums in the bay of how they were getting rid of pollutants. That bay is as toxic as can be. So imagine the toxic water being picked up, scooped by the planes and being dumped on the houses. Now that's water, of course, but it's got additional toxins in it. I have not heard of anyone, Steve, that has gone into that Santa Monica Bay and figured out what all of those poisons are, because they figured the solution to pollution is dilution. But that bay is poisonous. When we went out in that bay, we would drop our boat off the Santa Monica Pier, and we would go all the way to Catalina Island. And no one told us not to fish for halibut along Malibu. We used to fish for halibut. And everything is so polluted because of all the drums that have been dropped in there over the years. All you can look that up. This is happening all over the world. All over the world, they're dumping chemicals and poison.
Oh, I hope it's true, Shawnee. Just say they got misery on them. I hope it's true.
Poisons. So I want to, I guess, leave it here, Steve, because this is just beyond the pale, and understanding how we need to think now and go forward in truth and draw the line in the sand of who we are, because going forward, this is not going to bring the best out of people. I see so much illness now, mental illness. I see certainly the consequences of the frequencies.
Okay, here's how you know if Trump's really true or not. Get him to call Big Mike a male. If he does that, then I'm on side.
I see the consequences of the poisons that people have ingest or willfully taken, and it's going to be more. We know that there are more mRNA jabs to come, and it will be all managed through AI. We know that our lives will be managed at every moment, and we will be incarcerated into kill cities. And many people won't be afforded the opportunity to move into these quote unquote kill cities, aka smart cities, international cities of death, because they will be killed before. Many people will not survive a few years of the consequences of the toxic air, the toxic blowing up of electric vehicles. In fact, I would suggest any of you that live in an apartment complex where people have electric vehicles, that, and you know, it's against the law. I will tell you this, it's against the law to not rent to people that have electric transportation items. It's against the law. So they can bring in an electric scooter, charge it in their home. They can bring in whatever they have that is an EV, an electric vehicle with a lithium-ion battery. And this can be, you know, they can target these batteries, and they do. And they can cause fires. Houses will burn down, not only from the lithium-ion battery and the smart meters, but we've got the wireless water meters, too, to think about. And all the increased frequencies that are pummeling through our atmosphere, going in and out of all of us with the Wi-Fi in our phones. I think soon, the more that people can hardwire and use their cell phones less, I know that that's really off-grid. To really be off-grid, it would mean that you're not using a cell phone.
That's right.
Then your level of, the level of your communication would dwindle to nothing. But if you know what we're facing, then I'm supposing if you want to survive a little longer, if you want to protect as best you can the people that you love the most, I suppose those are some considerations that people are going to have to make. And also, I was hearing this, that people in Ukraine now are hiding in the forests. And that's interesting and horrific all at the same time, because I know many people won't survive well in the different kinds of climates that you face in the forest.
There you go, laugh, Shawnee.
When gathering food becomes your all-day project. And I just am watching how society is being dismantled and what people are having to do to escape the wars and to escape the hunger and famine, and literally leaving their countries and living in these refugee encampments by the millions for years and years and years.
And Deborah, it's only going to continue. That's what's so sad. It'll come here eventually. It'll be in Europe eventually. And eventually there'll be no place for people to go any longer.
Well, you know, that is the plan, isn't it? This is an extinction level planned policy on multiple levels. We have the Deagle report.
Yes.
That talks about the percentages of people that are planned.
And this is 2025. We are at the Deagle report year.
That's exactly right. And the report from Iron Mountain talked about that as well. I'm really so appreciative with Off Grid with Doug and Stacy,
yes,
because they found another interview I did years back with the Oath Keepers in Southern California, where I was presenting the report from Iron Mountain, along with the smart meters and other aspects of geoengineering or the weather weapons. And they found that. I had forgotten about that conference completely. And that's up, I think I sent that to you, Steve. People can see that. It's certainly on my site, on stopthecrime.net. I'm very thankful for them. I don't understand. It's amazing to me that they're still able to be up on YouTube. I was taken off of YouTube a long time ago.
And sadly, I'm afraid, Deborah, it won't be long before they whack that for what they're saying there. And I thank God, I hope they don't. I really do. I've watched for what we're talking about. We'll probably get away with this one being just on Israeli News Live, but when I know there's some of the subjects that we're planning on going in, I'll have to run it through iConnect to be on the safe side. So if you're watching and you see that it's a 30-second clip in the near future, just go on over to iConnect, click on the link and go to it, because you guys are here. You want to hear the information. And we're actually curious about how many of you really are watching the video, because iConnect has a better counter, and they're very, very state-of-the-art counter that can break it down to every country and how many people have viewed. And we're finding that normally it's about 5
Great link, Phil. I'm going to check that out later.
times greater on certain subjects. Not every subject, sometimes they are fairly accurate. But on this type, it's normally about a 5 times difference. So we may be getting, Deborah, over 100,000, close to 120,000 views.
Well, I hope that people pick this information up and share it far and wide, because we simply need to get to more people so that at minimum, people will have a greater understanding of what they face. It looks like those concepts are increasing now. People are becoming more aware of the enormity of what they face, but I find that people will hone in on certain aspects of what they face, and they can't fly over and look at the broader picture. And so with that, I think I just want to say we're all part of the human family. I certainly want to do my very, very best in getting information out to all of you as best I possibly can. And just leave this earth having tried and done the next best right thing every single day. And I think that's what we all need to strive to do.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Deborah, so much for being on with us again. And we're trying to have Deborah at least once a week.
Okay, that was interesting.
The Snooze Super Summer Sale is on now. Save up to 50% off selected mattresses.
We actually had something that was sort of unprecedented that came from the Catholic Church. Things are only getting stranger, my friends. This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to get into a ton of stuff in this video. And it's kind of amazing looking at what's been going on over the last week with our new, of course, president. But of course, now we're seeing a lot of conversations about where our future is going. And I'm going to get into a ton of stuff in regards to that. Also, I'm going to get into, I'm seeing a lot with religion. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people, for example, we had this recent conversation with Charlie Kirk and Michael, of course, Knowles. And I think this is a big part of our culture. And I think it does play a huge role in where we go in our future, because clearly our world is off track. I mean, doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that one out, right? So we're going to get into a ton of stuff in this video. I thought it was rather curious what the Pope has recently said. We actually had something that was sort of unprecedented that came from the Catholic Church. Check this out. U.S. Catholic Church has decided to speak out against our president about, of course, what's going on with ICE going and getting all these people, of course, that are not from our country. And a church representative said his policies go against some of the basic tenets of our faith, the fundamental rights of every human person that need to be respected, no matter their origin, no matter their situation. I find this absolutely amazing. It tells you kind of what's going on. What's happened to religion? Look at the Catholic Church. Is it really representing what it initially represented anymore? Matter of fact, that was the title sort of this video here, where Charlie Kirk is talking to Michael here. Is the Pope legit? It's a good question, considering the fact that they're putting out political positions now and are not even dealing with the faith anymore. Matter of fact, back in September last year, the Pope said something rather bizarre while he was in Singapore. I've covered it before. He said every religion is a way to arrive at God, which of course is not true. This is actually something that's contrary to a basic tenet of the Catholic faith, or even the Christian faith. He is directly contradicting the King of Kings himself, who said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one.
I never thought I'd see the day when the Pope said something like that. That's just shocking.
Comes to the Father but by me. I think that's John 14. So we have here the Pope literally contradicting him. And he even goes to great lengths explaining this 4 different ways while he's there in Singapore. He spends like 20, 30 minutes explaining this. He even mentions other religions, Hinduism, Buddhism. He's not talking about denominations, okay? He says every religion is a way to arrive at God. This is clearly 100% a direct contradiction of a core tenet of the faith. Yet, for some reason, they don't have a problem with that. Yet they do have a problem with our president deciding on who can and who cannot be, of course, in our country, right? I find that rather interesting. It shows you where our culture's at, that there's this hidden religion in our society, wokeism, and they pretend it's not a religion. And I think this is kind of the way the devil works. You also saw it with things like evolution and other things taught. Oh, this is not a religion. This is science. This is science. But it's interesting how they do this, right? So this is kind of the stuff I noticed of recent. And what's interesting is one of the people that visited with the Pope not too long ago, I think it was about a year ago. No, actually, it was a few years ago. But I thought this is really interesting because a lot of people didn't see this. So this had to do with climate change, right? Another core tenet of the faith, right? Apparently, these are the new core tenets of the faith. This is the new core tenets of the faith. He met with one of these Roth, of course, child. Oh, that's interesting. Why would he meet with her? That's so strange. Huh. I thought he was all about the faith. No, it seems like more like he's more interested in guiding the world a direction of those, of course, at the top. And do they have a plan for 2025? I believe they do, my friends. We're going to get into that a little bit. First, so I got to mention food supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. 4 weeks worth for $197. You're going to definitely want to get that if you have not already. Link is in the description for that. You've seen all the wonderful things happening around us. I'm being sarcastic, of course. I want to be prepared for it. Also, this book here, The Lost Ways, How Your Great-Great-Grandfather Lived Without Electricity, How You Soon May Be Living Without Electricity. Honestly, with some of the stuff I've been seeing, it could very well be the case. I've heard some people talking about, for example, there's this guy named Brandon, Biggs, here on YouTube, and he predicted our president's ear being grazed 4 months before it happened, right? He also predicted actually 2 other major things that happened. What happened at the Paris Olympics. He also predicted something more recently on January 1st with the Cybertruck thing in Las Vegas. And he also recently predicted that there's going to be another one of those things. And this time it will be much worse, right? And that will happen in the next 4 years. Of course, also we have all these, we have the Ukraine, of course, war, all this stuff going on. And could this turn into something much larger? Because clearly that's maybe what they want. We're going to get into that, like I said as well. I mean, it's wise to get this book. It's a printed version, $37 plus shipping. Link is in the description. So we're going to get into also a little bit about all this conversation recent with the Apocrypha, the book of Enoch, and how important that book really is. Believe it or not, Jesus basically said, I'm the dude from the book of Enoch. And I'll show that in this video. All right. And this, of course, is something because Wes Huff, you remember recently Billy Carson, Wes Huff debates. He went on Joe Rogan. Wes Huff went on Joe Rogan. And the fact is he's not representing the book of Enoch correctly. Of course, he did a good job going against Billy Carson, which is good. But he's been going around saying the book of Enoch is not legit. So I'm going to get into that a little bit as well. But what I find really interesting is kind of the time we live in. I think it echoes back to the time of Jeremiah, where the church is completely off track. It doesn't know what it's talking about. And we're going to get into that, like I said. So link below for all those things. Also, of course, my website, Your Videos, got lots of awesome videos, kind of like this one here, on various topics, the Vatican, the future, just all manner of stuff. Link is in the description. All right, so let's get on to the next thing. Actually, let me just show you this really quick. So we're going to get into a ton of stuff, like I mentioned. I had too many windows open, like usual. So this is my website. I get into prophecy, end time, all that kind of stuff, lost history. Anyway, let's get back to the video. So, of course, we have the fact that he met with one of these Rothschild Child members, and it's very obvious that he represents their interests. What's interesting about the word Vatican is it means divining serpents. All right? And the fact is, we had something really interesting that happened recently, or not too recently, but it's something that happened recently where that kind of represents what you see in that phrase, divining serpent. Let me show you this. So if you can scroll down here, Latin translation, it comes from a certain mountain, oracle. What is the mountain? It's around here somewhere. Okay, lots of different definitions here. Apparently it changed it, or here it is, Hill of the Oracle. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, so Hill of the Oracle, because there's a hill there, and that hill also is a serpent name. So a serpent hill that prophesies. So here you have the name Vatican, meaning serpent hill, oracle hill, serpents. I mean, doesn't sound good, really, does it? It doesn't really sound like a good thing. Now, what's interesting, of course, like I mentioned, there was a building, the only building that's been built in the last 100 years in the Vatican is the Vatican Assembly Hall, and it looks just like a serpent. Is that just a weird coincidence? I really don't think so. I really don't think so. We saw during the time 2,000 years ago when Jesus walked the earth that the people that he had the most trouble with were the religious leaders. They were teaching things incorrectly, right? So it makes sense that the same thing can be happening today.
100%.
Of course, Vatican City also is its own state, a city-state that has its own. Apparently, he's not required to have a passport when he goes to other countries.
Oh, I love fish.
And what's interesting is there's only one other place like this, where it's sort of like a city-state, has its own authority and jurisdiction. A lot of people don't know about this other place. This other place is where the BIS, central bank is, of course, in Switzerland. It happens to be in Basel, Switzerland, which is also another city-state, which a lot of people are not aware of. It's under a different governance structure compared to the rest of the country. Again, so it's like they make themselves separate from the rest of the world and say, we're our own gods. We have our own authority. No one's above us. And indeed, that is kind of how he operates as well. We're talking about the Pope. Now, what's interesting, of course, is they've already kind of telegraphed some of what they want to, of course, do. They talked about this quad, of course, Demic, again, trying to bring that back. But we already know a guy who has had a good track record of predicting things correctly has said that in the next few years, we're going to see a massive one that's going to be way worse than the one we saw in 2020. And he said something about 300 million, of course, people. And he's talking overall. That's quite a few. Could be gone as a result of it. Now, what's also interesting is we had this new
Advance. It's a word shaping our future way of life.
And coal, metals and minerals like those mined by Glencore.
New project, one of the weird projects that I heard our president announce. A lot of the stuff he's announced, I've loved. I thought it was great. And I like a lot of what he's been doing. There was one that seemed a little off, a little strange to me, and it was this Project Stargate, which I did a video on recently. And it's not that this thing can't be good. The issue is the people running it, the people that he put over it, have directly talked against him in the past. Sam Altman has directly spoke against our president and doesn't like him. For some reason, our president put him in charge of this. I don't get it. And of course, some of the stuff they're working on, Sam Altman's is well known for not exactly being the most safe when it comes to AI. Okay, there's even a article. There's some really ridiculous articles about Sam Altman, where he basically admits that it could be the end, of course, of the world. The stuff he's working on. I mean, it sounds like Terminator 2, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It sounds, it could very easily turn into something very, nefarious in the end. He warns it could take us all out, but he still wants to use it. I've shown that article before. I mean, there's a lot of funny articles like that around him.
That's like the atom bomb. There's a 10% chance that the atom bomb's nuclear fusion would blow up the whole world, and they still took the chance. 10% chance there would be a chain reaction all over the world, but they still went ahead and done it.
Where he just admits, yeah, this could cause the end, of course, of the world, but let's just do it anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff that he's working on, right? And of course, then you have this prophecy of popes. This is Saint Malachi prophecy from 1,000 years ago. That's very accurate, extremely accurate in how it details 112 different popes. Just the most recent ones are ridiculously accurate. Pope Benedict, Glory of the Olive, was the motto he wrote. The guys of the Olivetan order, Pope John Paul II, from the eclipse of the sun. The guy was born on a solar eclipse, and his funeral was on a solar eclipse. That's pretty accurate. And of the half moon, he had a half moon symbol on his vesture. I mean, all these are extremely accurate. And according to this prophecy, we're on the last one right now. Pope Francis is the last one, called Peter the Roman. And of course, one of the things that was known regarding Pope Francis is he didn't want to be called, the Pope. He liked the phrase Bishop of Rome rather than Pope. So it's interesting that we are in the time of the last Pope, and that he sits over the destruction, of course, of the church. And there's also another prophecy that was recently given by another man who's had a very good track record. He's the guy that initially predicted 47 would become president back in 2016. Mark, of course, Taylor. That guy also has a prediction about some books being discovered, some apocryphal books that will...
Okay, that Feynman prophecy, he only ever did one prophecy. That's all he ever done. Mark Hughes or something was his name.
Completely blow wide open some of the secrets from the Vatican Library and from the Vatican itself, and it will cause a huge rift and problem in the church, where a lot of people what's going on here? Our entire leadership is garbage. Or not garbage, well, you know what I mean. The entire leadership, everyone's going to stop trusting their leadership because of these things that are discovered. So that's another prophecy that's out there. And I find it really interesting because it kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about next in a minute here. But the fact is, the Pope is directly talking against our president regularly now, ever since he got in. And you can see here that he even argues with Italy's prime minister over him. Look at his face, looks super happy. So he apparently is not a fan of our president. And of course, I believe that the next thing we're going to see is the Gog Magog, which is, pretty much not a good thing. Basically like World War II, but number 3, right? And much worse. So that's basically probably what it would end up being is something to that effect. I think it would first be America, then, of course, Israel. Now, of course, it also says in Ezekiel 39 about this, I will send fire on Magog, and those who dwell safely, securely in the coastlands. What are the coastlands or the isles? Could that be England? Could it be? Those are also sort of like large islands, coastlands, or America, the coastlands of America. I don't know. It's an interesting question, though. At any rate, so of course we're going to get into a lot more. I wanted to talk about now this debate that was between Wes Huff and, well, not the debate, but Wes Huff talking about the Book of Enoch and some of the stuff he had to say, because he's been going directly against the Book of Enoch. And I believe that Jesus directly says, I'm the guy he's talking about in the Book of Enoch. What I mean is, the Book of Enoch talks about the Son of Man. And we see that all throughout the Book of Enoch. Got it around here somewhere. I know I got it. Okay, I'll just have to open a new one, I guess, apparently. Okay, so let me just open a new one. Book of Enoch, Son of Man. Here we go. Maybe this. Here we are. That might work. Let's take out the word Mount Hermon. That might help. All right, let's do it this way. So the Son of Man is a figure in the Book of Enoch who is described as the Messiah. And so the Son of Man is listed like 50 times in the Book of Enoch. And Jesus starts calling himself the Son of Man, directly referring to the Book of Enoch. Now, of course, what's interesting is Wes Huff here is basically ignoring this. Let me show you what I'm referring to. All right, check this out. So here we go. Let me play this. I got too many windows open like usual.
Yeah, it's a good question because, like you said, the only unambiguous quote in the Book of Jude is from what we refer to as First Enoch. And this was a very popular piece of Jewish literature in the decades previous to Jesus, and clearly in the time frame of Jesus, because Jude quotes it as something that he clearly thinks his audience is aware of, is interested in. I think we can say a few things. The Enoch that Enoch is named after is attributed to the great-grandfather of Noah. And from the time frame that this particular document comes from, I think we can unanimously say that Enoch was not the author. So
now what's the problem with this is that Jude clearly states that Enoch wrote this. As you can see here, Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied about them, see the Lord is coming with thousands upon thousands of his holy ones. So he's literally quoting Enoch here. So Wes is saying, no, actually, Jude, you don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't Enoch that wrote this. Does that make any sense? This guy is supposed to be a believer, and he's directly contradicting what Jude said. Now, of course, Jude lived 2,000 years ago, approximately, and he clearly thought it was from Enoch. For him to think that, I would assume that the book had to be at least hundreds of years old, bare minimum, for him to even believe that. You see what I mean? He wouldn't be convinced by something that just was written yesterday, obviously. But of course, if it did come from Enoch, it would be thousands of years older than him. You see what I mean? So he must have had some sort of evidence in his mind that it was. What's interesting, of course, is what we're really seeing here is some of Wes Huff's theological paradigm, because he is a Calvinist. And Calvinists, and this is basically evidence, this is his website, Wes Huff's website, where he shows a Calvinistic diagram here. But Calvinists don't accept the...
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to hear what Calvinists are different on, because why they're different.
The Book of Enoch. They don't accept anything outside the 66 books. So this is more of an assumption of his than actual anything that he has evidence for. And actually, he's literally contradicting Jude when he says that. So then we have this clip here. Let me play this. Check this out. This is from his own website. And he's going through here and he's giving arguments why this can't be from Enoch. And I'm going to actually show how he's completely wrong.
Wow.
While the author of the book is attributed to Enoch, Enoch of Genesis and the great grandfather of Noah, the writing itself probably doesn't go older than the 400s BC, and some sections of it actually come after the time of Jesus. Now, it's true that during the Hellenistic period of Judaism, starting about 200 years before Jesus, many ancient biblical characters became the subject of extra-biblical and apocryphal literature. These documents are what we now refer to as the pseudepigrapha.
So, of course, the book of Enoch is put in the pseudepigraphia, which, of course, means false book, meaning it's not from him, right? So, a lot of
pseudo, not from him, exactly.
People, a lot of historians say that it's not actually from Enoch. And what is the reason for saying that? They don't actually have much evidence. Matter of fact, they don't have any evidence, I would say. The arguments he gives here is not very good. Let's just put it that way. So
The point is, why is he so against Enoch?
Explain what he says. He basically says that only thing we have is that this book of Enoch was written in Aramaic, because we have the Dead Sea Scroll find. And he says that Aramaic likely did not come from Paleo-Hebrew. So he tries to claim that this book couldn't have come from Paleo-Hebrew because it would have been a Paleo-Hebrew from the time of Enoch. But the thing is what he doesn't point out, because he tries to give this sort of argument that Hebrew is closer to Paleo-Hebrew than Aramaic, which is actually not true. He sort of infers that. In reality, Aramaic is closer to Paleo-Hebrew than Hebrew itself. Yes, Aramaic is very similar to Paleo-Hebrew, as both are closely related Semitic languages. Aramaic script largely replaced the Paleo-Hebrew script.
Oh man, I can't stop the glaring.
And here's the interesting part. Which is closer to Paleo-Hebrew, Aramaic or Hebrew? Aramaic is closer to Paleo-Hebrew. So what he actually says in this video, he actually says some more. He says some arguments. I don't want to play the whole thing because of copyrights and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, he goes in and he tries to claim that Aramaic is not related to Paleo-Hebrew as much as Hebrew, when it's not true. Actually, I just showed you how actually it's closer to Paleo-Hebrew than Hebrew itself. And of course, what's interesting about this is he also goes on and he talks about the Hellenistic period. Now, the Hellenistic period was 323 to 31 BC. So he says a lot of writings were written in that, and he's basically claiming that Enoch was written during this time. What's interesting is in Jeremiah 8:8, it talks about how the church, not the church, but Israel got off track. Jeremiah lived around 650 to 570 BC. So according to scripture, this is when everybody gets off track. Let me show you this. So if you go to Jeremiah 8:8, yeah, here we are. Check this out. How do we say we are wise? The law of the Lord is with us. Most certainly in vain made he it. The pen of the scribes is in vain. Let me show it in more context. Let's see if we can get more verses here. All right, here we go. So, of course, here we go. So, here we go. So, basically, God's saying that they're serving the sun and the moon and the stars of the heavens, which they've loved and served. And so they have rejected their own God. And this is what he says to say to them. Jeremiah says to them, when the people fall down, do they not get up? When someone turns away, do they not return? Why do these people turn away? Why does Jerusalem always turn away? They cling to deceit. They refuse to return. I've listened intently, but they do not say what is right. None of them repent of their wickedness, saying, what have I done? Each pursues their own course, like a horse charging into battle. And then it says, even the stork in the sky knows her appointed seasons, etc., etc. How do you say we are wise, for we have the law of the Lord, when actually the lying pen of the scribes? So what he's saying is they're actually trying to twist the scriptures. And what's interesting is this is around the time when, according to Jesus, this is around the time when they started getting off track, the leadership in Israel. And that's why so many of the prophets were, of course, killed. is because of this, because the leadership didn't like him. And who else got killed? The King of Kings himself, right? See what I mean? So what's interesting is a lot of these Protestants, like for example, and actually Catholics as well, is they'll say that they'll come to this one verse. This verse is Romans 1:2, Romans 3:2, and they'll say that we get the scriptures from the Jews. So this is it's sort of a long thing, but I'm gonna explain this out. So basically, what I'm gonna just kind of encapsulate what's going on here. So okay, so let me just play this clip and then it'll make sense. Okay, I'm gonna explain out what's going on here. All right, let me play this clip.
Our Lord didn't leave us a Bible. He left us a church. And the church got caught by the Bible. Sort of true. I mean, I think our Lord, as part of Godship, God is the author of all 66 books, right? And we had... Wait, oh, you slipped that in. Hey, come on, you can't do that to me. Hold on. No, this is interesting, though. What?
Okay, so Michael here is Catholic. Charlie Kirk here is Protestant. He said 66 books. Catholics have more than 66 books. Okay, now let me play the rest.
Why is it that Catholics acknowledge divine books that Jews themselves don't think are divine? The keepers of the Torah don't even agree with your canon.
Okay, so you hear that? So this is a very common argument from Protestants today, is that the Jews don't accept these books, so why do you accept them? This is actually not true. This is not true. And this comes back to the book of Enoch. This comes back to all of the Apocrypha, Maccabees, Susanna, Tobit, Esdras. All these books were accepted by the rabbis, but what happened was they eventually rejected them once Christ came. So what happened was these apocryphal books directly talk about the Messiah. Book of Enoch talks about the Son of Man coming. The Sibylline Oracles, which I'm going to show you in a minute here, directly predict that he will be on a cross, directly predict that he'll have a crown of thorns, predict a number of things, okay? Just straight up predict it. The book of Adam, first book of Adam and Eve, the second book of Adam and Eve, the book of Adam, all predict a number of things about a Messiah coming and when he'll come, exactly when he'll come. He came exactly when they predicted he would come. These apocryphal texts did. Okay, I'll show it in a minute too. I'll show it a little bigger. Also, they predict he'll be baptized in the River Jordan. They predict that a dove will come down on him. All like a ton of stuff you see through the Gospels were all predicted in the Apocrypha in great detail. Matter of fact, I just saw a video earlier of a former pastor who's no longer a Christian who said, well, actually, the Old Testament doesn't really predict Jesus. It's just, vague sayings. Because they look at the 66 books, and there are predictions in there. There's at least, I think, 30 about him coming. But these ones in the Apocrypha are ridiculously accurate, ridiculously detailed, and there was no way for those who rejected him to be able to explain them away. You can't explain away these texts. You can't explain away the Sibylline Oracles. You can't explain away the Book of Enoch. You can't explain away Second Esdras. So what do they do instead? They rejected him after he came. Now, what's going on here is these Protestants, like Charlie Kirk is arguing, no, they've always rejected him. That is not true. We even have historians like Justin the Martyr who clearly indicate, no, they changed the scriptures. They changed them. They deleted some of them. I will show you this. And the entire point of what I was saying with Wes Huff is he's claiming that the Book of Enoch was just made up and is fake. This is basically what he's saying, even though Jude says the exact opposite, right? And why does he say it's fake? Because he's a Protestant and he's been taught this. Not because he came to this own conclusion through evidence, but no, this is what he was taught. This is his theological stance. So this is what I'm trying to get at with this video. And this all relates to where the church is at. Because if you take the foundation out of the church, what do you got left? You got a bunch of political stuff like the Pope is doing. The Pope is just sitting there like, saying all religions lead to God when it's completely contradicting Christ. It's just 1 + 1 = 2. Literally, the most core tenet in the faith. He's contradicting that. But then he goes on and says that our president is a meanie because he's kicking, of course, people out, of their country, and that this is against the faith, which is hilarious. So, and no longer is the Catholic Church actually a church. It's like some made up political group pretending to be a church. And this is what happens when you reject the truth. Because even Catholics also go against some of the stuff I'm talking about with regards to the
That's a good question, Shawnee. I don't know.
Apocrypha. And they also go with sort of the rabbis that were after Jesus came.
Oh, they okay.
So this
they
is what I'm
have.
trying to get at with this whole thing. So when Wes Huff here tries to claim it's fake, he also goes in and says that it was probably made up just after the Babylonian exile because they used a solar calendar in the Book of Enoch. Let me show you how he's wrong about that. So he claims that the way you know that the Book of Enoch is not ancient is because they used a solar calendar. This is ridiculous. Let me show you how ridiculous his argument is. Okay, here we go. Did Babylon use a solar or lunar calendar? Primarily a lunar calendar. So for one, he said that after the Babylonian exile, they used a solar calendar. That's not even true. I didn't play the clip because I don't want to play 5 minutes of this clip and then he claims copyright or something on it. He says that the reason why the Book of Enoch has a solar calendar is because it probably was written after the Babylonian exile when they had used solar calendars, which, as you can see here, they didn't even use them. They used lunar calendars. So he was even wrong about his entire point was wrong. Completely wrong. Matter of fact, when you look into the Book of Enoch, it actually uses both solar and lunar days in the year. Let me show you that. I had that open before. Let me see. Does the Book of Enoch use a solar and lunar? Okay, here we go. There you go. See what it says. Okay, so this one doesn't actually say, it doesn't say here, but it actually uses both. Let me show you. So, okay, so and this guy, he's writing about it. And he says here, we read that there's 364 days in a solar year, and a lunar has 10 days less than the sun every year, which means there should be 354 days in a lunar year, when there's 12 months. If you have 6 months, 30 days, and 6 months, 29 days, which is the case with the current lunar year we keep, then we have the right number of days in a lunar cycle of 12 months, 354. These verses appear to speak of adding additional 13th month, moon month in the year, occasionally to keep the year anchored with the sun and stars, which keep the harvest in their appointed times in the right seasons. It seems to be saying that the solar year is 364 days, but that the lunar will be less. Enoch, to me, since I started reading it for myself a few years ago, instead of listening to man's opinions about what it says, has always testified of the solar and lunar years being different lengths, but that when used together, they work perfectly. So it actually is predominantly solar, but it also uses lunar, and it does so in an accurate way. Now, let me explain something. So, again, his argument was it uses a solar calendar, it can be from Israel. In reality, what did they use during the ancient times? When they made these ancient pyramids, around the time of Enoch, when they made the ancient pyramids, these ancient megaliths that we talk about, what kind of calendar did they use during those times? Did many of the ancient pyramids use solar or lunar calendars? The ancient pyramids, primarily referring to those in Egypt, used a solar calendar. This means they based the timekeeping of the movement on the sun. And that is also the case with a lot of other ancient megaliths. They used a solar calendar. So this just shows he's completely wrong. The fact that he uses a solar calendar is actually 100% on track to what would have been used during the time of Enoch. So he's just completely wrong. His arguments are all garbage, is basically what I'm saying, against the Book of Enoch. And I actually go into it in more detail in my other video on my main channel. But let's get into some of these other things. I got to get into a few more things. So again, a lot of these people that are Protestant that say that there's only 66 books, they go and they use this verse here, Romans 3:2. Much in every way, chiefly because to them were committed the oracles of God, referring to the Jewish people. So their argument is, well, the Jewish people today only accept these 39 books in our Old Testament, therefore that must be the only books. But let me show you how they're wrong, because they changed their books. This is what I was saying earlier. For example, in the time of King Josiah, were the scriptures lost? Yes, the scriptures were lost in the time of King Josiah. So this shows you that the Israel as a country can go off track so far that they lose the scriptures. So they might have been committed the oracles of God, but that doesn't mean they did a good job keeping them. You see what I mean? This is so their argument that they're keeping it correctly is not correct, because even in the time of King Josiah in the scripture, they lost the scriptures. Okay. Now Origen was from the time of about 220 AD. He was from the early church. He talks about the Jews did not use the book of Tobit and that it was not found in Hebrew, even among the hidden writings. Now interesting that he mentioned the hidden writings. I also have his quote here in this book. This is one of the books that got me on YouTube in the first place, Dictionary of Early Christian Beliefs. This is actually just merely quotes from early church fathers on various topics. Okay, and let me show you what he said. Origen said, the Jews do not use Tobit. It is not even found in Hebrew hidden writings, as I learned from the Jews themselves. However, since the churches use Tobit, you must know that even the captivity, some of the captives were rich and well-to-do. So he's talking to some guy about it. And so what did that say there? It says that there's hidden writings and that they didn't have them in their hidden writings. So what are these hidden writings? The word apocrypha means hidden writing. That name was attributed to these books by St. Jerome in a disparaging manner because he hated the Apocrypha. But the word Apocrypha means hidden, and they are hidden writings. So there is a base scripture, and then there's a hidden scripture. And we know this from also Esdras. Second Esdras talks about this. Where is that at? I got it around here somewhere, I would assume. My goodness, I got so many windows up and I keep losing stuff. Let me show you here. Second Esdras, here we are. So here's Second Esdras. I've shown it many times before. Basically how God had Ezra rewrite the entirety of the Old Testament, all the books, over 40 days' time. He had 5 scribes writing what he was saying, literally speaking the words, being inspired. Make public the 24 books that you wrote first. Let the righteous and unrighteous, or worthy and unworthy, read them. Keep the 70 that were written last for the wise among your people. So what's going on here is the 39 books in the Old Testament equal the 24 books of the Hebrew Tanakh. Make public the base scripture, the 39 books, which are the equivalent.
Yeah, Tally, we sort of got no choice, have we?
To the 24 books in structure in the Hebrew Tanakh. But then, look, there's some hidden writings. There are 70 books that are hidden to give it to the wise among your people. You don't give it to everybody else. You only give it to the wise. You see that? This is the hidden writings. So we already know and have established that there are hidden writings. The Protestant church has completely rejected the hidden writings and just says there are no hidden writings. They're all bad. You see what I'm getting at? So this is where they go wrong. And interestingly, the Jews that, of course, after Jesus rejected these books, and I'm going to show you that now. So interestingly, that Tobit, you saw there in 250 AD, they didn't even have it anymore, right? What's interesting, though, that we have Tobit in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here you go. Check this out. So the Dead Sea Scrolls, here too we must be cautious for 5 fragments of the Book of Tobit, 4 in Aramaic, 1 in Hebrew, were surfaced at Qumran. This proves that during the time of Christ, and even before the time of Christ, they had the Book of Tobit as scripture. The Essenes used it as scripture. And also you have a story in the Gospel, which one? I don't even, I'll just tell you the story. It's the Sadducees. The Sadducees ask a question. Yeah, here we go. So this is the Book of Tobit was considered scripture community at Qumran. We had, of course, the Sadducees asked Jesus a riddle. 7 men married a woman, they all die. Who is she married to in heaven? Right? This is clearly referring to the Book of Tobit because that was the only story related to that. The Book of Tobit was about a woman who married 7 men and all died. So it clearly showed that even the Sadducees used the Book of Tobit as scripture. So you have the Essenes, you have the Sadducees using Tobit as scripture during his time, 2,000 years ago, yet now they claim it was never scripture. And this goes over to Justin the Martyr. Justin the Martyr and a number of other early historians that tell you that they did remove these books. Justin, but I'm far from putting reliance on your teachers who refuse to admit the interpretation made by the 70 elders who were at Ptolemy, king of the Egyptians. This is referring to the Septuagint. Let me show you that. The Septuagint, 70 elders who were at Ptolemy, King Ptolemy, 72 elders, and they wrote the Septuagint. Where does it say that? Come on, just say it. Septuagint. Yeah, here we go. It's right here. You can see it right there. So this is he's referring to the Septuagint, them creating the Septuagint. Okay, right here. So that's who he's referring to when he says that. You refuse to admit the interpretation made by the 70 elders at Ptolemy of the Egyptians. And so what he's saying is you refuse to accept the Septuagint scriptures because the Septuagint has the Apocrypha in it. And it was written around 270 BC. So that already shows that when they say today they never had these as scripture, they're not telling the truth, because even in 270 BC, they had the Septuagint, which had them in it as scripture. And even after that, in the Qumran find, they had it as scripture still. So they clearly removed these books, just like they say in these historical accounts, that they have all together taken away many scriptures from the translations effect by the 70 elders. So my point is, why is this important? Because Jesus identified himself as the man referred to in the book of Enoch. Let me show you this. This is crazy. This is called the Sibylline Oracles. This is an apocryphal text as well. Directly predicts several things about Christ. Shall come unto the incorruptible in glory with pure angels and sit at the right hand. Okay, here we go. I gotta start here. And when high thundering Lord of Sabaoth, making the end of the fate, shall raise the dead, sit at his heavenly throne, firmly fixed, the mighty pillar, then amid the clouds, Christ, who himself incorruptible, shall come unto the incorruptible in glory with pure angels. So it says that he, the Messiah, will sit at the right hand. And this is before he even came. This was written hundreds of years before Christ came. And there's actually more, but there's actually much more detailed. I'll show you that in a little bit here. Let's see here. I got one that's super detailed. Okay, where is it at? I got so many windows like usual. Okay, come on, where you at, dude? Okay, here it is. Is this it? Yeah, here we are. Okay, finally found it. I got a million windows open. The great son of the immortal fame. This is before you came. This is before Christ came. The great son of the immortal famed in song from the harp proclaimed, to whom a throne to be held fast the most Father gave, ere he has brought forth, then he was raised up according to the flesh, given, washed at the mouth of the river Jordan. So the son of the immortal, the son of God, shall be given flesh, shall be baptized in the river Jordan, which goes rushing, trailing into gleaming billows from the fire escaping. He first shall see God's sweet spirit descending with the wings of a white dove. Then we have the wings, they have the Holy Spirit coming down on him. A pure flower shall bloom, the springs will be full. He shall show the ways to men, teach the truth, heavenly paths, teach them all with wise. He shall come for judgment, persuade a disobedient people, while he boasts, tells them to repent. Is decent, praiseworthy, from a heavenly sire. Billows shall he tread, sickness of mankind shall he destroy, heals people. He shall raise up the dead, raises Lazarus, and many sufferings shall he drive away, and from one scrip shall he be men's fill of bread, meaning he feeds the 1,000, whatever it was, with the bread. I think that's what it's referring to. Then you got down here more. Let's see if I can get it on the screen. Okay, here we go. When the house of David shall bring forth a child, he's of the house of David, and in his hand the whole world, earth, heaven, and sea, and he shall flash upon the earth as once, two begotten from each other's ribs. So he came into being on earth, flesh, saw human form appearing, it shall be when the earth shall be glad in the hope of a child. So he's born as a child. But for thee only, Sodomic land, all our evil woes laid up, for thou thyself, ill disposed, didst not comprehend thy God. So this is talking about the fall of Jerusalem in 66 AD, who mocks at mortal schemes, but from the thorn did crown him with a crown of thorns, and fearful gall. They gave him gall, didst mingle unto insolence and spirit. This shall bring evil woes about for thee, O wood, O so blessed, upon which God was outstretched, the cross. This is all predicted beforehand, hundreds of years before he came. That was written. That's extremely accurate. You got other ones too. Check this out. Let's see. We'll start with this one here. This is second Adam and Eve, at the end of which great 5.5 days and a half, concerning which I've made a promise to thee and thy father. I will send my word to save thee and thy seed. The word, my word, the logos. When 5,000 years will be completed, then at the 5,500th year, the beloved Son of Messiah will come upon the earth, resurrect Adam's body from the fall. He will come and he will be baptized in the river Jordan. There you go, another one. This is the book of Adam, written well before he came, and the Dead Sea Scrolls is one example proving some of this. So I just wanted to kind of go through some of this. I go into more detail over my other channel. I get into even how it talks about a lot of other things as well. I'm going to get into more over there. And I didn't even get into the part where, so here you have this part right here. Let me play this really quick and then we'll end it here.
Both in the Canaanite world, Ashtra.
This is when Jesus says, on this rock I will build my church. And he's not talking about the Pope or Peter. He's standing on the rock of Mount Hermon, which is referred to in the book of Enoch as where the fallen angels came down and made, of course, a gate to the underworld. He came in onto this mountain and said, the gates of hell will not prevail against me. He says he's the Son of Man. He's talking about the book of Enoch all the time. Jesus is.
Prophet Edrei were gateways to the netherworld. This is, again, adjacent to a cult of Baal, the god of the underworld. This is when he's talking. It's hard to miss the rock. If you're standing there, upon this rock, I will build my church.
Okay.
What if your card offered you benefits?
We actually had something that was sort of unprecedented that came from the Catholic Church. Check this out. U.S. Catholic Church has decided to speak out against our president about, of course, what's going on with ICE going and getting all these people, of course, that are not from our country. And a church representative said his policies go against some of the basic tenets of our faith, the fundamental rights of every human person that need to be respected, no matter their origin, no matter their situation. I find this absolutely amazing. It tells you kind of what's going on. What's happened to religion? Look at the Catholic Church. Is it really representing what it initially represented anymore? Matter of fact, that was the title sort of this video here where Charlie Kirk is talking to Michael here. Is the Pope legit? It's a good question, considering the fact that they're putting out political positions now and are not even dealing with the faith anymore. Matter of fact, back in September last year, the Pope said something rather bizarre while he was in Singapore. I've covered it before. He said every religion is a way to arrive at God, which of course is not true. This is actually something that's contrary to a basic tenet of the Catholic faith or even the Christian faith. He is directly contradicting the King of Kings himself, who said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. I think that's John 14. So we have here the Pope literally contradicting him. And he even goes to great lengths explaining this 4 different ways while he's there in Singapore. He spends like 20, 30 minutes explaining this. He even mentions other religions, Hinduism, Buddhism. He's not talking about denominations, okay? He says every religion is a way to arrive at God. This is clearly 100% a direct contradiction of a core tenet of the faith. Yet, for some reason, they don't have a problem with that. Yet they do have a problem with our president deciding on who can and who cannot be, of course, in our country, right? I find that rather interesting. It shows you where our culture's at, that there's this hidden religion in our society, wokeism, and they pretend it's not a religion. And I think this is kind of the way the devil works. You also saw it with things like evolution and other things taught. Oh, this is not a religion. This is science. This is science. But it's interesting how they do this, right? So this is kind of the stuff I noticed of recent. And what's interesting is one of the people that visited with the Pope not too long ago, I think it was about a year ago. No, actually it was a few years ago. But I thought this is really interesting because a lot of people didn't see this. So this had to do with climate change, right? Another core tenet of the faith, right? Apparently, these are the new core tenets of the faith. This is a new core tenets of the faith. He met with one of these Roth, of course, child. Oh, that's interesting. Why would he meet with her? That's so strange. Huh. I thought he was all about the faith. No, it seems like he's more interested in guiding the world a direction of those, of course, at the top. And do they have a plan for 2025? I believe they do, my friends. We're going to get into that a little bit. First, so I got to mention food supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. 4 weeks worth for $197. You're going to definitely want to get that if you have not already. Link is in the description for that. You've seen all the wonderful things happening around us. I'm being sarcastic, of course. I want to be prepared for it. Also, this book here, The Lost Ways, How Your Great-Great-Grandfather Lived Without Electricity, How You Soon May Be Living Without Electricity. Honestly, with some of the stuff I've been seeing, it could very well be the case. I've heard some people talking about, for example, there's this guy named Brandon, Biggs, here on YouTube, and he predicted our president's ear being grazed 4 months before it happened, right? He also predicted actually two other major things that happened. What happened at the Paris Olympics. He also predicted something more recently on January 1st with the Cybertruck thing in Las Vegas. And he also recently predicted that there's going to be another one of those things. And this time it will be much worse, right? And that will happen in the next 4 years. Of course, also we have all these, we have the Ukraine, of course, war, all this stuff going on. And could this turn into something much larger? Because clearly that's maybe what they want. We're going to get into that, like I said as well. I mean, it's wise to get this book. It's a printed version, $37 plus shipping. Link is in the description. So we're going to get into also a little bit about all this conversation recent with the Apocrypha, the Book of Enoch, and how important that book really is. Believe it or not, Jesus basically said, I'm the dude from the Book of Enoch. And I'll show that in this video. All right. And this, of course, is something because Wes Huff, remember recently Billy Carson, Wes Huff debates. He went on Joe Rogan. Wes Huff went on Joe Rogan. And the fact is he's not representing the Book of Enoch correctly. Of course, he did a good job going against Billy Carson, which is good. But he's been going around saying the Book of Enoch is not legit. So I'm going to get into that a little bit as well. But what I find really interesting is kind of the time we live in. I think it echoes back to the time of Jeremiah, where the church is completely off track. It doesn't know what it's talking about. And we're going to get into that, like I said. So link below for all those things. Also, of course, my website, Your Videos, got lots of awesome videos, kind of like this one here, on various topics, the Vatican, the future, just all manner of stuff. Link is in the description. All right, so let's get on to the next thing. Actually, let me just show you this really quick. So we're going to get into a ton of stuff, like I mentioned. I had too many windows open, like usual. So this is my website. I get into prophecy, end time, all that kind of stuff, lost history. Anyway, let's get back to this. So, of course, we have the fact that he met with one of these Roth, of course, child members, and it's very obvious that he represents their interests. What's interesting about the word Vatican is it means divining serpents. All right. And the fact is, we had something really interesting that happened recently, or not too recently, but it's something that happened recently where that kind of represents what you see in that phrase, divining serpent. Let me show you this. So if you can scroll down here, Latin translation, it comes from a certain mountain, oracle. What is the mountain? It's around here somewhere. Okay, lots of different definitions here. Apparently it changed it, or here it is, Hill of the Oracle. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, so Hill of the Oracle, because there's a hill there, and that hill also is a serpent name. So a serpent hill that prophesies. So here you have the name Vatican, meaning serpent hill, oracle hill, serpents. I mean, doesn't sound good, really, does it? It doesn't really sound like a good thing. Now, what's interesting, of course, like I mentioned, there's a building, the only building that's been built in the last 100 years in the Vatican is the Vatican Assembly Hall, and it looks just like a serpent. Is that just a weird coincidence? I really don't think so. I really don't think so. We saw during the time 2,000 years ago when Jesus walked the earth that the people that he had the most trouble with were the religious leaders. They were teaching things incorrectly, right? So it makes sense that the same thing could be happening today. Of course, Vatican City also is its own state, a city-state that has its own, apparently he's not required to have a passport when he goes to other countries. And what's interesting is there's only one other place like this, where it's sort of like a city-state, has its own authority and jurisdiction. A lot of people don't know about this other place. This other place is where the BIS, central bank is, of course, in Switzerland. It happens to be in Basel, Switzerland, which is also another city-state, which a lot of people are not aware of. It's under a different governance structure compared to the rest of the country. Again, so it's like they make themselves separate from the rest of the world and say, we're our own gods. We have our own authority. No one's above us. And indeed, that is kind of how he operates as well. We're talking about the Pope. Now, what's interesting, of course, is they've already kind of telegraphed some of what they want to, of course, do. They talked about this quad, of course, demic. Again, trying to bring that back. But we already know a guy who has had a good track record of predicting things correctly has said that in the next few years, we're going to see a massive one that's going to be way worse than the one we saw in 2020. And he said something about 300 million, of course, people. And he's talking overall. That's quite a few. Could be gone as a result of it. Now, what's also interesting is we had this new project, one of the weird projects that I heard our president announce. A lot of the stuff he's announced, I've loved. I thought it was great. And I like a lot of what he's been doing. There was one that seemed a little off, a little strange to me, and it was this Project Stargate, which I did a video on recently. And it's not that this thing can't be good. The issue is the people running it, the people that he put over it, have directly talked against him in the past. Sam Altman has directly spoke against our president and doesn't like him. For some reason, our president put him in charge of this. I don't get it. And of course, some of the stuff they're working on, Sam Altman's is well known for not exactly being the most safe when it comes to AI. Okay, there's even a article. There's some really ridiculous articles about Sam Altman, where he basically admits that it could be the end, of course, of the world. The stuff he's working on. I mean, it sounds like Terminator 2, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. It sounds, it could very easily turn into something very, nefarious in the end. He warns it could take us all out, but he still wants to use it. I've shown that article before. There's a lot of funny articles like that around him where he just admits, yeah, this could cause the end, of course, of the world, but let's just do it anyways. This is the kind of stuff that he's working on, right? And of course, then you have this prophecy of popes It's the St. Malachi prophecy from 1,000 years ago that's very accurate, extremely accurate in how it details 112 different popes. Just the most recent ones are ridiculously accurate. Pope Benedict, Glory of the Olive, was the motto he wrote. The guys of the Olivetan order, Pope John Paul II, from the eclipse of the sun. The guy was born on a solar eclipse, and his funeral was on a solar eclipse. That's pretty accurate. And of the half moon, he had a half moon symbol on his vesture. I mean, all these are extremely accurate. And we're on, according to this prophecy, we're on the last one right now. Pope Francis is the last one, called Peter the Roman. And of course, one of the things that was known regarding Pope Francis is he didn't want to be called, the Pope. He liked the phrase Bishop of Rome rather than Pope. So it's interesting that we are in the time of the last Pope, and that he sits over the destruction, of course, of the church. And there's also another prophecy that was recently given by another man who's had a very good track record. He's the guy that initially predicted 47 would become president back in 2016. Mark, of course, Taylor. That guy also has a prediction about some books being discovered, some apocryphal books that will completely blow wide open some of the secrets from the Vatican Library and from the Vatican itself, and it will cause a huge rift and problem in the church where a lot of people like, what's going on here? Our entire leadership is garbage. Or not garbage, well, you know what I mean? Like the entire leadership, everyone's going to stop trusting in their leadership because of these things that are discovered. So that's another prophecy that's out there. And I find it really interesting because it kind of ties into what I wanted to talk about next in a minute here. But the fact is, the Pope is directly talking against our president regularly now, ever since he got in. And you can see here that he even argues with the Italy's prime minister over him. Look at his face, looks super happy. So he apparently is not a fan of our president. And of course, I believe that the next thing we're going to see is the Gog and Magog, which is, pretty much not a good thing.
Okay, Phil, good night, mate. God bless.
World War II, but number 3, right? And much worse. So that's basically probably what it would end up being is something to that effect. I think it would first be America, then, of course, Israel. Now, of course, it also says in Ezekiel 39 about this, I will send fire on Magog, and those who dwell safely, securely in the coastlands. Like, what are the coastlands or the isles? Could that be England? Could it be, those are also sort of like large islands, coastlands, or America? The coastlands of America? I don't know. It's an interesting question, though. At any rate, so of course we're going to get into a lot more. I wanted to talk about now this debate that was between Wes Huff and, well, not the debate, but Wes Huff talking about the Book of Enoch and some of the stuff he had to say, because he's been going directly against the Book of Enoch. And I believe that Jesus directly says, I'm the guy he's talking about in the Book of Enoch. What I mean is, the Book of Enoch talks about the Son of Man. And we see that all throughout the Book of Enoch. I got it around here somewhere. I know I got it. Okay, I'll just have to open a new one, I guess, apparently. Okay, so let me just open a new one. Book of Enoch, Son of Man. Here we go. Maybe this. Here we are. That might work. Let's take out the word Mount Hermon. That might not help. All right, let's do it this way. So the Son of Man is a figure in the Book of Enoch who is described as the Messiah. And so the Son of Man is listed like 50 times in the Book of Enoch. And Jesus starts calling himself the Son of Man, directly referring to the Book of Enoch. Now, of course, what's interesting is Wes Huff here is basically ignoring this. Let me show you what I'm referring to. All right, check this out. So here we go. Let me play this. I got too many windows open like usual.
Yeah, it's a good question because, like you said, the only unambiguous quote in the Book of Jude is from what we refer to as First Enoch, and this was a very popular piece of Jewish literature.
Actually, we already saw that, guys. I think about a puff. Okay, we'll try this one.
My grandpa used to say, the Aussie sun's hot enough to fry it in. When it comes to your pain, don't worry. Waddle's...
There, folks, may have just accused you and me. All right, folks, this one is literally insane. This one is, honestly, the Pope has said so many cockamamie things over the years, but this one has to take the cake. He is deceptive in this. He is just outright lying and being manipulative. He makes statements that he knows he should not have made. And quite frankly, he just outright completely spoke against what is biblical. Now, I am going to address all of what
Good night, Talia.
But what I
I'm
want
out
you to
soon.
do is watch this.
I'm out soon too.
This is him saying what he says. He's in Mexico. He's being interviewed while he's on his trip to Mexico. And what he says here is just derogatory. In my opinion, it's just completely out of line. So I'm going to let you hear what he says. We'll start with that first. Then we'll go to what the President of the United States said about what the Pope says in this video. After that, I'm going to just shed...
Okay, I'm going to love to see what Trump's response was to the Pope. I'll tell you what, Trump is doing some good things.
Right, on what's actually biblical
On
here,
the surface,
and why
anyway.
the Pope is out of his literal mind saying what he says. This one's crazy, folks. So hold on to the seat of your pants. Here we go.
Una persona che pensa soltanto in fare muri, sia dove sia, e non fare ponti, non è cristiano.
Wow.
Questo non è nel Vangelo.
This is not the gospel. Wherever he may be, wherever he is, if he builds walls, not bridges, he's not a Christian, and this is not the gospel. Wow. I guess he's accusing Nehemiah of being an ungodly man. But we'll get into that in just a second. Because what he's saying here is not just extra biblical, it's non-biblical. What he's saying is against what the word of God says. He's a literal cuckoo. He hates Trump so much that he's going out of his way to smash Donald Trump because he knows Donald Trump is the one guy that is going to block his aspirations of creating this global world for his new boss that's coming, the final Antichrist. That's what this appears to be, folks. This is so insanely crazy. Listen to the little editor's note that he puts at the end of his little statement. This is nuts. Like, literally, this is nuts. Here we go.
Yeah, he does.
Poi, quello che mi diceva cose così era per votare o non votare, non mi mischio. Soltanto dico, quest'uomo non è cristiano.
Yeah, James is a full-on Trumper. I agree, guys.
It's not for me to vote or not to vote, but I'm telling you that this man is not a Christian. Wow. Wow. I've said it many times before. I don't know if Donald Trump is a believer. I don't know that he's even said
We know he's not, so don't play dumb, James.
that he's a believer. He certainly is a cultural Christian. Not that that makes things acceptable. I desperately want him to walk with Christ and give his life to Christ. He may have already done it. But to say that Donald Trump is not a believer on the basis that he actually encourages building a wall along the Mexico border? You're a cuckoo. You are a cuckoo, Mr. Pope. Okay, sorry, that is wrong. And some people may look at me and say I'm being disrespectful or insulting. No, I'm not. He's being disrespectful and insulting to the very God that he claims to represent, when he misrepresents God this way and he lies through his teeth. Well, I don't want to tell you whether or not to vote or anything. I'm just telling you that this man isn't a good guy. That's basically what he's doing here. Do you see the manipulation, folks?
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy.
Si dice questo così. Bisogna vedere se gli ha detto così le cose, no? E questo do il beneficio del dubbio.
Wait, you're going to give him the benefit of the doubt? You did not give him the benefit of the doubt. Well, I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Well, you didn't give him any benefit of the doubt. You just basically said the man isn't a Christian because he wants to build a wall to protect his citizens. Talk about insane. Let's get into the president's response. President catches wind of this. He's got something to say about it, and I don't blame him for having something to say about it. He should have something to say about it. I don't think it's fair what they did to him. Let's take a listen.
Mexico is the new China. And I mean, I just had word as an example, the Pope. The Pope was in Mexico. Do you know that? Did everyone know, right? He said negative things about me because the Mexican government convinced him that Trump is not a good guy, because I want to have a strong border. I want to stop illegal immigration. And the Pope just made a statement. Can you imagine? I just got a call. As I'm walking up here, they said, Mr. Trump, the Pope made a statement about you. I said, the Pope? What did the Pope say? I like the Pope. I mean, was it good or bad? Because if it's good, I like the Pope. If it's bad, I don't like the Pope.
I mean, I don't blame him for adding a little humor to this. I mean, I'd be a little funny about this. I'm kind of appreciating the way he's responding here. I'm watching this response with you, folks. God bless President Trump. I see a much lighter side of him in this second term. And you know what? God bless him.
You got to admit, Trump is a funny guy.
The Pope is being told that Donald Trump is not a nice person, okay? Donald Trump is a very nice person. And I am a very nice person.
You are. He is.
And I'm a very good Christian, because the Pope said something to the effect that maybe Donald Trump isn't Christian, okay? And he's questioning my faith. I was very...
No, he didn't say maybe Donald Trump is not a... No, he says the man can't be a Christian because he builds walls instead of bridges. Interesting what Donald Trump says about his faith. This is... I don't think I've ever heard him refer to himself as a believer. Interesting.
I was very surprised to see it, but I am a Christian. I'm proud of it. Okay. For a religious leader...
Okay, he just said he is a Christian and he's proud of it. The great deception.
Question a person's faith is disgraceful. I'm proud to be a Christian, and as president, I will not allow Christianity to be consistently attacked and weakened, unlike what is happening now with our...
But we know he signed the no-hide laws.
Current president.
Now, clearly he's saying this just a few days before he's inaugurated, okay? And I really appreciate the heart that the man has to defend Christians in our country. I think it's pretty incredible. And like I said, this video here is the first time I've ever heard the president refer to himself in this video as an actual Christian who's proud to be a Christian. I think that's pretty great. And I really, truly hope he is one of those guys that's like, Christian rough around the edge.
First time for me too, guy.
Because Donald Trump doesn't publicly say things like that unless he truly believes he is. So at some point, he gave his life to the Lord. And I say, thank you, Jesus. And I pray that God continues to work on him with that. I think that's pretty awesome. I do take exception with one part of his statement, and I'll explain that in just a second. But I actually don't think it's a bad thing. I'll just explain why I say what I say, because it's really important. Because I'm going to do the exact opposite of what Donald Trump says you should do if you're a spiritual leader, because I believe that if you are a spiritual leader and that you stand up for the truth, that doing so should extend into speaking against people who are representing to be Christians but are not doing so. And I'm telling you right now, the Pope is absolutely not doing so.
Okay? Believe me.
He has every right to be upset. Every right.
No leader very important, and this has just been given out to the press 2 seconds ago. No leader, especially a religious leader, should have the right to question another man's religion or faith, especially when they feed all sorts of false information into him.
I don't disagree with him in that respect. Or if you're going to do so, then you better tell the truth about what's actually happening. And the Pope is absolutely not telling the truth. He's not telling the truth on a bunch of levels. The first way that he's not telling the truth is in his characterization of who Donald Trump is. The insults that he's throwing out, the things that he's saying are not accurate. They're absolutely obscene. They're completely ridiculous. And quite frankly, the whole idea of you building a wall instead of a bridge makes you a non-Christian, and the idea that you are not exemplifying the gospel cannot involve a bigger lie. That is a lie that is just absolutely insane, and he ought to be completely ashamed of himself. And I'm going to demonstrate that to you in some pretty consequential ways. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean when I talk about this, because this is crazy. The Bible mentions borders from the very first book. The Bible mentions borders early on. Let's not even get into the fact that Nehemiah, who was believed to be an extremely godly man, who was motivated by the Spirit of God to come into his country as a patriot and rebuild Jerusalem. His primary objective was to do what? Rebuild the walls. He knew that he needed to rebuild the walls because if they had no walls, they had no security. If they had no walls, they had no religious freedom. If they had no walls, they had no ability to be able to pray in the temple. If they had no walls, they had no ability to be able to.
आजकल लोग पैसे से ज्यादा लाइक्स और इंटरनेट डेटा का हिसाब रखते हैं कि 10-20 रुपए के पीछे कौन भागता है यही है इसका तरीका
Nobody believed me at first, but now everyone wants one. A customer returned her knife after realizing she could have saved up to $55 by purchasing 2 knives instead of 1.
Be able to freely do what God had called them to do. Shame on you, Pope, you big fat hypocrite. The Vatican that you live in is surrounded by walls. You literally are in an island inside of Rome. And the walls surround you completely. And yet you are willing to tell the president that he's not a Christian for wanting to put walls around his nation and his citizens? Are you out of your cotton-picking mind? Are you nuts? Let's just think that through for just a second. His dwelling structure has walls around it. Everything that he does involves walls. When the man gets in, literally, you saw it in the video. When the man gets in this mobile that he's in, that transports him in a parade, he's surrounded by bulletproof walls. No man who puts a wall around him is a Christian? Well, then you must be the devil. I'm telling you, he's a liar. He's saying what he's saying because he can't stand Trump. And the reason why he can't stand Trump is because Trump stands in the way of his globalist dream. What a joke the guy is. He ought to be embarrassed. He should be ashamed of himself. I'm sorry, but I'm telling you this as a pastor and a man who's dedicated himself to the reading and the studying and the teaching of God's word. You are an embarrassment, Pope. You have disgraced the name of God and the word of God by doing what you're doing. You have been able to functionally demonstrate the fact that you are a brutal hypocrite. You can't even move in a parade or go from spot to spot unless you have a wall of bulletproof glass surrounding you. What a joke you are. How about we just hold the Pope to his own false doctrine? How about we just simply call him on the carpet? How about we call upon him to tear down the walls of the Vatican? Let's just send an email to the Vatican and say, based on the Pope's words, we want him to become a Christian, so he should tear down the walls that he and his people built and maintained. If he's so concerned about being a Christian, how about he build a bridge into the Vatican so people can freely move into there? Walk through the Sistine Chapel, tear the walls down of the house that you live in, Mr. Pope. He'll never do it. And I'll tell you why he'll never do it. Because he's a hypocrite. He knows that what he's saying is wrong. Even he knows that what he is saying is wrong. The Lord acknowledges borders, folks, so early on in the Bible and speaks about them so positively on so many levels, it's not even funny. Let me read to you some passages that talk about these walls. Let's read passages that talk about borders. Let me give you an understanding so that you're aware of what's happening here. Some of these are just going to be contexts that speak about borders that are around cities, ancient borders around ancient cities, which in essence are walls.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about how God speaks favorably about these things.
Yeah, when you have doubts about Trump, just remember he did sign the no-hide laws.
In his own temple, he speaks about building walls. Genesis 23:17. Look at the verse. And the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before, remember, the field, and the cave which was therein, and all the trees that were in the field, that were in all the borders round about, were made sure. Genesis 47:21, look what it says here. It says, and as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt, even unto the other. Think about that for a second. Even to the other end thereof. What's he talking about? He's talking about walls. Exodus 8:2, and if thou refuse to let them go, this is God speaking to the Pharaoh, using Moses and Aaron. If thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite thy borders with frogs. He didn't say I'm going to smite thy borders with frogs because I condemn borders. He's using borders to function as a demarcation for the existence of Egypt and where it is located.
That's true.
He's not condemning the borders. Exodus 16:30.
My name is Graham Dunford from New South Wales, Australia.
Good, I'm happy for you.
35, and the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years until they came to the land, to a land inhabited. They did eat the manna until they came unto what? The borders of the land of Canaan.
Yeah.
God's distinction of where Canaan was being noted by the terminology borders. Exodus 34:24. By the way, we haven't even gotten to the interesting part yet. I'm going to show you some points here that are going to blow your mind if you're the Pope and you believe this garbage. Exodus 34:24, for I will cast out the nations before thee. Notice this, and God makes this promise, and enlarge thy borders. Neither shall any man desire thy land, and thou shalt go up to appear before the Lord thy God thrice in a year. He's talking about God expanding the borders of the holy city that they go to worship in. The walls. Here's a good one. Numbers 20, verse 17. These are God's people using terminology that acknowledges the existence of borders. Walls, folks. They must not be Christians. They must not care about the gospel. Let us pass, I pray thee, through thy country. We will not pass through the fields or through the vineyards, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway. We will not turn to the right hand or to the left until we have passed thy borders. These are people that are
with borders,
to be granted permission to go through the country, promising that they will not take any of the country's resources until they are outside of the country's borders. And now you're going to put down President Trump, who wants to make walls that will prevent people from taking things from within our borders? What a joke, Mr. Pope. What a joke. Same type of passage here in Numbers chapter 21. Same request. Numbers 21:22. Let me pass through thy land. We will not turn into the fields nor into the vineyards. We will not drink of the waters of the well. We will go along by the king's way until we pass thy borders. Think about this, folks. Joshua chapter 11, speaking about borders, verse 2. And unto the kings that were on the north side of the mountains, and to the plains of Kinneroth, and in the valley, and in the borders of Dor on the west. Joshua 13:2. This is the land that yet remaineth, all the borders of the Philistines and the Geshuri. Let me continue reading. Verse 3 of Joshua chapter 13. From Sehor, which is before Egypt, even unto the borders of Ekron northward, which is counted to the Canaanite. 5 lords of the Philistines, the Gazathites, the Ashdodites.
Now, Shawnee, you can't be a watchman and buy into Trump. I agree on that. It even says in the Bible, even the elect will be deceived. He's a perfect example of it.
Ashkelonites, the Gittites, and the Ekronites, also the Avites. From the south, all the land of the Canaanites, and the Mirah that is beside the Sidonians, unto Ephah, to the borders of the Amorites. Borders, folks. He's speaking about unique and distinct demarcations that they will use to determine what land belongs to them as God has given it to them. This is your land, and the borders create the distinction as into where the boundaries of that land are. God himself must not be a Christian. Joshua 22. Again, using borders as a legitimate, walls as a legitimate tool to establish demarcation for geographical locations. Joshua 22:10. And when they came unto the borders of Jordan that are in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by Jordan, a great altar to see to. Think about that, folks. Look at Joshua 22:11. Same type of thing. Borders used to acknowledge a specific demarcation for a particular geographical region. Those are walls, folks. And the children of Israel heard say, behold, the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the half tribe of Manasseh have built an altar over against the land of Canaan. Notice this, in the borders of Jordan at the passage of the children of Israel. I seem to think, because I visited the Vatican before. When you go to the holy structures that are in the Vatican, you know what you see? You see walls. And on the walls, you see lots of decorations. Christian decorations, supposedly. You guys see the lying and the hypocrisy in the Pope?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I feel very okay about defending Donald Trump in this one. Donald Trump is trying to restore a nation of peace to us.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to protect our land. I'm so thankful for the fact that he's our president. One of the best days was Monday. I enjoyed every minute of Monday. It was so awesome. I even enjoyed watching the crying leftists lose their minds. They need to keep their promise and leave this country. That's what they need to do anyway. Look at this. 1 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 29. And by the borders of the children of Manasseh, Bet-Shean in her towns, Tanakh and in her towns, Megiddo and her towns, Dor and in her towns. In these dwelt the children of Joseph, the son of Israel. In these what? Borders. In these borders, these towns had borders. Those are walls. Oh, I love this. This is so beautiful. Psalm chapter 74, verse 17. This is beautiful. Look at this. Thou hast set. Who's thou? God. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth. The earth has borders? The earth has walls? Gravitational forces are being associated as such. Thou hast made summer and winter. Psalm 147:14. He maketh peace in thy borders. We should send that one to Donald Trump. I love the fact that he's acknowledging the Lord God. Why? Because the Lord will make peace in thy borders. You seek him and put him first. I think Donald Trump loves this country so much that he knows and he has to acknowledge the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the one who saved his life to help save this country. He maketh peace in thy borders and fill.
That's why I haven't been playing much of James. He's too far up Trump's butt.
Thee with the finest of wheat.
I'm out after this one, guys.
I love this. The promise. Song of Solomon 1, verse 11. We will make thee borders of gold with studs of silver. Oh, I love this one. Look at Isaiah chapter 60, verse 18. Violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation and thy gates praise. Thou shalt call what salvation? Thy walls. This is not the Christian. Really, Mr. Pope? Walls are being associated with salvation. I'm sorry, but this is crazy. Jeremiah 15:13, thy substance and thy treasures will I give to the spoil without price. And for all thy sins, even all thy borders. Jeremiah 17:3, O my mountain, in the field I will give thy substance, all thy treasures to the spoil, thy high places for sin throughout all thy borders. Borders, 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 walls, walls, walls. Look at this. This